Dust gathered on the bones of Rutledge Crossing, the way years gathered on old regrets layer by powder fine layer, until no one quite remembered where the first hurt began. The town squatted at the edge of the high desert, a crooked necklace of clapboard buildings strung along a scar of wagon-rutted street that pointed toward nowhere in particular. Most traffic bypassed it now that the new rail spur thundered 20 miles east, but the wind still stopped to gossip in the eaves, and the setting sun still bled itself dry across the empty horizon. Adelise Hartwell arrived on the tail end of such a sunset, nothing but dirt road dust between her and the kind of future she refused to name aloud. She rode the stage from Benson's Ferry because the ticket was cheap and the town was far enough from everywhere she had ever been called someone's burden. From the cracked window she studied Rutledge Crossing's leaning storefronts, grain, mercantile, half-shuttered livery, a falsely cheerful bakery whose sign swung on one hinge, brittle, temporary, survivors. They mirrored the raw edges inside. She stepped off the stage in a weathered split skirt and an old cavalry coat 2 sizes too large. The coat once belonged to her father. The lining still smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and saddle soap, even after 5 years folded at the bottom of a carpet bag. She measured the street the way a tracker measures distance, eyes down, listening for anything that might matter. No welcome committee offered a handshake. No eager townsfolk jostled to carry her satchel. Nothing new. She had not expected kindness. What she did expect was work. Work was safer than kindness, because work came with coin and no obligations. The town's loan establishment offering board was the Jasper Spur, a low-roofed saloon, inn, and gambling den that advertised rooms by the night and trouble by the hour. Its proprietor, Clement Jasper, met her on the porch in a haze of cheap cigar smoke and condescension. He looked her up and down as if appraising livestock. "You the one answered the notice?" "I am. Cook, washer, general help." He read from a slip of paper he'd clearly forgotten he'd posted. "Pays $6 the month. Bed in the attic, 2 meals." "1," Adelise corrected, steady but polite. "Your notice specified 1 meal a day." He grunted, annoyed that she'd read the fine print. "Fine. 1. Rules are simple. Keep to yourself. Don't talk back, and don't frighten the patrons with ideas." "I reckon I can manage." He spat over the railing. "We'll see." Jasper showed her the kitchen, a cavern of soot-blackened beams, iron stove tilting on a splintered leg, and shelves half-stocked with weeviled flour. She stowed her carpet bag in the narrow attic room, so low she could touch the rafters with an outstretched palm. Then she went to work. The Jasper Spur filled after sundown with ranch hands fresh from spring roundup, oil skin drovers smelling of sweat and mesquite smoke, and silver seekers chasing rumors of a new load in the Aravipa foothills. They played poker at sticky tables scarred by knife tips, drank rye diluted with well water, bragged about horses and conquests and how many men they'd once faced down at the mouth of a revolver. Adelise moved among them ghost quick, collecting empty tins, refilling lantern oil, wiping up the spills no one noticed until she did. She cooked 2 venison hash with prickly pear chutney, skillet corn cakes sweetened by a whisper of molasses, and beef bones slow simmered until broth coaxed marrow into silk. She did not skimp. Food was respect, and she would not let these strangers disdain a plate she set before them. The men ate in wolfish silence at first, surprised by flavor in a place that usually sold only velocity, get drunk fast, forget faster. A few offered a nod her way. One tried to slap her backside. She caught his wrist mid-swing and squeezed until joints ground like gravel. He apologized with sweat beading under his whiskers, and the rest watched her more carefully after that. When the rush ebbed near midnight, Adelise ladled for herself a modest share of stew and 2 corn cakes. Habit said she would return to the attic and eat alone, but exhaustion dug hooks into her shoulders. The kitchen was sweltering, and the scent of spilled ale had settled into the rafters like a headache. She sought air. She eased to the side. Door into the yard, where moonlight carved the world into silver and tar. Two rangy dogs, one an old model blue heeler, the other a half-blind mutt with a crooked tail lifted heads from their dusty bed beneath the hitch rail. They watched her approach, wary but hopeful. Adelise smiled. She broke a corn cake, whistled low, and both dogs slunk closer. "What do you think you're doing?" Clement Jasper's voice cracked the quiet. He strode from the saloon's back. Steps, the ember of his cigar glaring like an angry eye. "Taking supper," she answered evenly. "Out here? The night's cooler than the kitchen." He huffed. "You eat inside, at the scullery bench. Patrons don't like peering out the window and seeing help lounging like gentry. I'm not in sight of your patrons. You are in sight of me." He jabbed the cigar at her plate. "Inside or with the dogs? Choose." Heat crawled Adelise's neck. She swallowed the retort that rose, because retorts cost coin when a job hung in the balance. Without a word, she stepped off the stoop, gave a soft click of her tongue, and settled cross-legged beside the heeler. Dust puffed around her boots. The mutt rested its head in her lap, hopeful for scraps. Jasper snorted approval and vanished back inside. She ate slowly, methodically, measuring each bite against the hollow behind her sternum. The humiliation needled, but it was familiar, and familiarity was armor. She'd eaten in worse places, in alleys behind train depots, beneath bridge trestles where cold mist turned bread to paste. Here, at least she had stew, and the dogs liked her company. A long minute passed. Night insects thrummed in brittle grass. Then boot heels crunched on cinders. Adelise looked up, expecting Jasper again. Instead, she saw a stranger, a tall man in a linen shirt the color of faded bone, sleeves rolled to forearm scars, coat slung careless over one shoulder. His hair was a black too stubborn for moonlight to silver, and his eyes carried the long horizon inside them. He moved without swagger, but with an ease that prickled every watcher's nerve. The dogs went tense, not hostile attentive. The stranger studied Adelise, then the empty stoop, then the stew bowl balanced on her knee. "Room at that rail?" he asked, voice low, rough as a canyon wall catching wind. "Plenty," she answered. Wary Dodd, instead of taking the rail, he unfolded an ironwood stool, one that usually sat beneath the card sign, in ledger, and set it beside her. He sat. The stool rocked once on uneven ground, then settled. He braced forearms on his thighs, palms open, posture casual enough to convince nobody. "I'm called Dorian Shaw," he said. Up close she saw the fine crow's feet at his eyes, lines that come from squinting into distance, not from laughter. "Adelise Hartwell. Miss Hartwell, they sell food inside. I make it, they sell it, yet here you eat." She flicked her gaze toward the back door. House policy. His jaw tightened at that. A minute clenched like a gun hammer pulled. 2 clicks. He said nothing more, merely unwrapped a wax paper packet and offered half a thick slice of dried apple to the heeler. The dog took it, tail thumping once in dusty gratitude. They sat in companionable silence. Steam lifted from her bowl toward the moon. The air smelled of juniper night bloom and spent cartridges, someone inside practicing draw speed after too much rye. Finally he asked, "You got people here?" "No. Then what holds you?" "Work." He considered that answer a long while, nodding once as if it clarified something private. Then he tilted his head, studying the bruised shadow low on her left forearm, a mark a sharp-edged crate had gifted during unloading, though rumors would twist it into other shapes soon enough. "Work shouldn't leave fingerprints," he said. "Sometimes it does." She looked him straight on, letting him read the steel under her fatigue. "Sometimes that's the price of letting tomorrow come." The way he held her gaze unnerved her more than any catcall inside. Not invasive, evaluative. Like a farrier tapping a hoof, listening for hollow spots. When he spoke again, his tone carried quiet verdict rather than question. You're stronger than all this. A humorless smile tugged her mouth. Strength doesn't always pay the rent. He nodded again, as though filing that truth alongside others, and rose. The stool creaked. Mind if I call on you tomorrow, Ms. Hartwell? For what purpose? To see if you're still eating outside with the dogs. I might have a different table in mind. She opened her mouth to decline. His eyes held a calm insistence that felt less like persuasion than inevitability. Before she formed an answer, the saloon's back door slammed, spilling lamplight and the stink of frustration. Clement Jasper stormed down the steps, red-faced. That she still occupied ground he'd marked as unbecoming. You, he barked at Adelise. Inside, now. Dorian Shaw pivoted between them. Not threatening, he didn't have to be. His mere insertion into the narrow space changed its shape. The dog stood, hackles half lifted. Jasper faltered one step, suddenly aware that the lean lines under Shaw's coat might resolve into something metallic. Problem, Mr. Jasper? Shaw's voice remained soft, conversational. Yet behind the softness lay a tension like bowstring. Drawn to ear. No problem at all, Jasper muttered, but he motioned again at Adelise. Rules are rules. She's on her supper. On my time, in my yard. Shaw turned to Adelise. You finished? She set the empty bowl aside. Yes. He reclaimed the wax paper packet, fed the last apple slice to the mutt, and folded the stool. But he didn't move toward the door. Instead, he hooked the stool across his shoulder like an improvised cudgel and said to Jasper, Lead the way. I'm thirsty for decent whiskey. Jasper blinked, recalculating. New variables entered the ledger, the stool-wielding stranger, the watchful dogs, and the possibility of coin. At length the ledger balanced. He grunted and trudged up the steps. Shaw offered a hand to help Adelise rise. She hesitated, then accepted his grip, warm, steady, calloused in a way that told stories her curiosity wasn't ready to hear. Inside, music from a weary piano stumbled under clumsy fingers. Laughter rose, sharp-edged, from a card table. Someone cursed the dealer in a language that tasted of Gulf Coast salt. She would walk back into that and vanish among empty bowls and spattered pans. Before following, Dorian Shaw bent and stroked the healer's ears. Low enough that only Adelise and the dogs heard, he said, We watch over our own, don't we? The stranger climbed the stairs. Adelise trailed one step behind, pulse beating against bruises old and new. She wondered if a man broke a rule on her behalf. In a place where rules weren't shields but chains, what debt would tomorrow claim? She reached the threshold and saw Jasper already at the bar, brandishing the cheap half-bottle he gave. Free only to high-rolling winners. Shaw ignored the offer, set the ironwood stool square in the aisle, and pulled it up beside the scullery bench where she was supposed to crouch unseen. Then he looked at her, deliberate. The room fell hush and stages cards pausing mid-deal, conversations snagging on uncertainty. Jasper froze, bottle aloft, uncertain which affront might cost him more, defied rules or lost custom. Adelise held her breath. Shaw patted the stool. An invitation. No, a statement. Dogs slipped in behind her, curling beneath the stool as if it were always theirs. Somewhere a glass shattered. Outside, wind lifted dust in lazy swirls that caught the last embers of twilight. Inside, she took one step, then another. When she set her weight on the stool's edge, a soundless circuit closed between her and the stranger, between the stranger and the room, between the room and a future that suddenly shifted on its axis. Clement Jasper opened his mouth, face modeling, but words died unspoken. Because through the batwing doors swaggered two men Adelise had never seen, one with a scar that cut his grin in half, the other twirling a revolver like he wanted an excuse to fire. Their eyes swept the saloon and locked onto Shaw. Well, I'll be, said the scarred one, voice slick with malice. If it ain't the ghost of Kandera Gorge, Shaw didn't rise. His hand stayed loosely on his thigh, near nothing in particular, unless you knew what to look for. Adelais knew. Very little except that the saloon's air had turned thick as boiled molasses. The mutt growled. Shaw's knuckles whitened. Scarface's grin widened out, and Adelais Hartwell understood, too late, that the stool beside a stranger might be the most dangerous place in the Arizona Territory. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Shaw's knuckles whitened. Scarface's grin widened. And Adelais Hartwell understood, too late, that the stool beside a stranger might be the most dangerous place in the Arizona Territory. A brittle hush fell over the Jasper Spur. Lamplight wavered in hurricane chimneys, throwing long shadows that jittered across walls already trembling from the saloon's collective heartbeat. Patrons froze mid-gulp. Cards hovered above felt. Even the piano behind the divider stopped its drunken stagger through Red River Valley, as the player's fingers stiffened against chipped ivory. Adelais felt her own pulse climb her throat. Like a miner desperate for air, she straightened on the ironwood stool, mind-running calculations she didn't know she possessed. Exits, distances, which boards would groan. Where Clement Jasper kept the old Spencer carbine, he told Drunk Ranch. Hands had rusted to useless. She hardly noticed the corn cake crumbs the mutt licked from her boot heel. Scarface, the man who'd named Shaw a ghost, tipped his hat back with a thumb scarred by powder burns. The revolver-twirling partner, a wiry blonde whose grin showed too many teeth, clicked the cylinder closed with a theatrical snap. "Fancy meeting you on this side of the river, preacher," Scarface drawled. His voice was smooth molasses poured over broken glass. "Wasn't sure you knew how to enter a building that didn't already smell of brimstone." "Preacher?" Adelais's gaze cut to Shaw, but his profile revealed nothing beyond a slight crease between brows, half irritation, half regret. "Evening, Wit," Shaw said, tone bone dry. He didn't stand. Didn't reach for the gun Adelais now suspected hung invisible along his right hip. "Thought you were rotting in a jail at Pecos Crossing." Scarface, witch-eyed to tap the jagged seam cleaving his cheek. "They patched me instead. Seems the Horace Mining Company appreciates my particular talents. Real shame they didn't patch Father Duggan too. Oh, wait." His eyes glittered. "You saw to that yourself, didn't you?" Murmurs rippled through nearby tables. "Father? Asterisk Ghost of Kendera?" The names meant nothing to Adelais, but the weight. They carried bent the room. Wit's companion, still twirling his iron, laughed a high, reedy laugh. "Reckon we ought to collect the bounty, Wit. Heard it was a solid $1,000, dead or alive." $1,000. Adelais's stomach tightened. That sum could buy half of Rutledge Crossing, debts included. Enough to make rational men reckless. And reckless men monsters. Wit ignored his partner. Eyes fixed on Shaw, he took one slow step forward. Floorboards creaked like tired bones. "Stand up, Ghost. I want the room to see you bleed." Shaw exhaled once, a breath that carried resignation heavier than fear. He did not rise. Instead he spoke, voice pitched only for Wit's ears and by extension, Adelais's, because she felt every tremor it carried. "Wit, you know how this ends if you press. I don't want blood on these floors. Not mine, not yours. You turn around, walk back into the dark. We call the debt settled." His gaze flicked to Twirler. "Take your dog with you." The blonde's grin faltered, but Wit barked a laugh. "Debt? Brother, the books you keep can't close that easy." He drew his revolver, slow for show, so every eye marked the polished nickel and the little devil etched in the hammer. "Unless your ghost stories tell wrong." He cocked the hammer. "Ghosts can't bleed." Shaw's right hand lowered to his thigh. The movement was casual, but tension spider webbed across his shoulders. Adelais felt her breath hitch. Instinct screamed move, but her body sat rooted by twin forces: terror, and the startling certainty that leaving would betray something sacred. The dogs sensed the shift. The blue heeler rose, hackles bristling, the mutt-planted paws against Adeliza's shin with a whine that sounded suspiciously like a warning. Wit leveled the revolver. The blonde laughed, but the sound came a note too high, nerves jangling under bravado. "Hey, Ghost, you still fast as the legends? Or that iron rust like everything else in this dump?" A chair scraped. Adeliza's peripheral vision caught Clement Jasper half-ducked behind the bar, eyes wide, hand pawing blindly for the borrowed Spencer that she now suspected was not nearly as broken as advertised. He found it, knocked 3 bottles in the process. Glass shattered, rye scent flooding the air. Wit glanced Jasper's way, annoyance flickering. "You point that pea shooter my direction, barkeep, and I'll snap your spine before you blink." Snap your spine. The phrase dredged memory. Adeliza's older brother's drunken threat after Ma's funeral. Her hand closed around the ironwood seat, knuckles whitening. She shoved the memory aside. The present demanded every synapse. Shaw's voice sliced the thickening panic. "Wit, last chance. Always the Samaritan." Wit's sneer deepened. "Since when do ghosts care about bystanders?" Shaw rose. It was a simple movement. Boots scuffing floor, coat falling open, yet the whole room recoiled as though he'd pulled lightning from a breast pocket. Under the coat's drape gleamed the dull luster holster of a worn but brutally maintained Colt. No pearl handles, no silver filigree. A weapon built for function, carried by someone who respected neither ornament nor the superstition that a gun needed naming. Adeliza's breath caught, not at the pistol, but at Shaw's eyes. They had shifted, pupils narrowing to flint points. Irises storm dark. The calm traveler had burned away. What stood was something honed. Wit cursed softly. The blonde blanched. For a half-second nobody moved. Then Scarface fired. Hash hash hash. The 6-second maelstrom. What followed lasted perhaps 6 seconds, yet altered 6 lives and the memory of a whole town. Wit's gun bucked, muzzle flash blooming yellow-white. Shaw sidestepped, motion smooth as wind over sand. The bullet punched the spittoon, sending a fan of tobacco sludge across the floor. Shaw's draw blurred a whisper of steel clearing leather. Loud in its silence. 2 shots cracked, nearly overlapping. The first slammed the blonde's twirling revolver from his hand, shredding knuckles into red confetti. The second drilled into the ceiling beam above Wit's hat, splinters raining like hot hail. Before Wit processed the near miss, Shaw stepped forward, offline, pivoting around the gunman's flank. His left hand clamped Wit's wrist, twisting with torque learned somewhere grim. Bones popped. Wit's weapon clattered to the floor. Shaw's Colt halted at Wit's temple. Click. He cocked the hammer. Silence. A single drop of whiskey ticked from the shattered bottle behind the bar. The blonde whimpered, cradling his ruined hand. Somewhere a poker player exhaled a prayer. Shaw spoke. "Gun on the floor, boot heel over the trigger guard. Do it." Wit's jaw flexed. Adela saw hatred, but also the shock of meeting something he had not believed existed outside bedtime threats. He complied, nudging the revolver with a trembling boot. "Lyle," Wit hissed to the blonde, "pick it up." "Lyle picks anything," Shaw said loud enough for all, "and I paint his blood across that far wall." Lyle froze. Tears leaked down cheeks dusted with powder soot. Shaw shifted his Colt to cover both men, then addressed the room. "Anybody else aiming iron, set it on the bar, now." No shout, just iron law. The order yielded clatters. Even Jasper obeyed, sliding the Spencer onto the bar's edge as though it had turned venomous. Only then did Shaw speak to Wit in a tone softer, more lethal. "I warned you," Wit snarled. "One day you'll run out of warnings, Ghost." "Maybe," Shaw conceded. "But not tonight, and not here." He gestured with the Colt. "Out, through the bat wings, slow." He flicked a glance to Lyle's bleeding hand. You too. Before they could move, new sound entered, the rapid clop of hooves, sputter of a steam wagon, and half a dozen voices raised outside. Reinforcements. Adelize realized the first pair had not come alone. Whit grinned, blood on his teeth where he'd bitten his cheek. Told you, I ain't alone this run. Pressure cracked inside Adelize's skull. We're outnumbered. She risked a count. 9 lanterns visible through batwing slats, bobbing with riders and 2 men afoot. 11, counting Whit and Lyle. She did not know Shaw's reputation, but she knew bullets still obeyed arithmetic. Shaw noted the same. He backed toward Adelize, gun tracking Whit. Miss Hartwell, he said without turning. Fetch the Spencer. Is it loaded? She snatched the carbine. Breech open, 2 grimy rounds. She thumbed the lever, chambering with a metallic clack that sent adrenaline surging. Shaw's next words poured like cold water. Take the dogs, slip through the kitchen, up the back stairs to the attic. Bar the hatch. Do not come down till dawn, or until you hear me speak your name. Leave? During a siege that risked burning her only refuge to cinders. Some part of her balked. At abandoning the stranger who had offered a stool. At reliving the night she'd fled her brother's rage. Courage and fear twisted her ribcage. She hefted the Spencer. I shoot straighter than I mop. He finally looked back, and though his eyes still held the storm, she glimpsed respect. I don't doubt that. But these men'll burn the spur to ash to drag me out. No sense both of us roasting. He lowered his voice. Fires, Miss Hartwell, travel upward. Attic is death trap. So I stay, she said evenly. She locked eyes with him the way she once had with a half-broke Mustang, acknowledging danger, refusing retreat. Or you give me a plan besides hiding. The corner of Shaw's mouth ticked, a spasm aiming for a grin but landing closer to disbelief. Stubborn, he muttered. Survivor, she corrected. Outside, a rough voice boomed. Send him out, Whit. Or we drag the place down. Shaw sighed, like a man agreeing terms with an uncooperative universe. Fine, you flank the hallway. If they break the bat wings, shoot knees. Lantern oil on the bar. Adelize crouched behind the hallway frame, Spencer muzzle just visible. From here she saw Shaw and Avery face to face in the dusty street lit by wagon lanterns. Whit and Lyle stood close, weapons reclaimed. 10 others ringed them, some with repeaters, 2 with sticks of dynamite protruding like devil's fingers from a saddlebag. Avery dismounted. Tall military posture, saber scar down neck. His eyes tracked the saloon interior, likely spotting Adelize's barrel. He smirked. Didn't picture you hiding behind kitchen girls, preacher, Avery said. Shaw's response was calm. Didn't picture you working for miners who'd poisoned the Aravipo watershed either. Yet here we are, disappointing each other. Whit spat. Enough scripture. Ghosts worth 1,000 dead. 25 alive if we drag him to Kendera Gorge Tribunal. Avery's gaze never left Shaw. Money's one reason, but mostly, I just can't abide being made fool of after you derailed our first shipment. So Shaw had crossed them already. Sabotage, theft. Adelize filed the data like a card sharp stacking the deck. You killed Duggan, Avery continued. You torched our ore wagons. Seems fair I kill you and ride out rich, Shaw spread hands. Then do it, if your men fancy pouring blood on oil-soaked boards. But you might ask Plains Company how their last tent town fared. He nodded toward Jasper's spur roof. Tin catches spark faster than you draw. The threat landed. Avery looked back, noting lanterns perched on eaves, the wind gusting just enough. Shaw pressed. Let these folk be, Captain. Your quarrel's mine. I'll ride with you. Settle in the desert, man to man. He glanced at Adelize's hide spot. A signal she translated as hold. Give me your word the town stays untouched, and I'll go. Avery's jaw worked. Greed versus honor. But Whit cut in. No, We string him here. Make example. Shaw's voice cooled degrees. Wit, your vendetta already cost you a face. Walk away before it costs more. Wit's eyes burned. Can't, not while you're breathing. Avery lifted a hand toward Wit. Easy, then to Shaw, your surrender. Don't cover our debt at the gorge, nor the bounty. And I've no faith you'll stay put if we take you quietly. Adelai's tensed. Decision brewing, Shaw sighed. Then name your price. Avery considered. Bounty's 1,000. Town looks skinny on cash, but the mine office'll double payout if I haul your corpse before sunrise. 12 men split that, not bad pay. He lifted fingers, counting invisible options. I'll trade you a choice, preacher. Die herewith. A stray bullet when we open fire, or die slow when Warden Fisk strings you and records confession. He stepped closer, voice a razor. Either way, these folks still burn. They hid you. That's aiding outlaw. Shaw's stance shifted, a subtle forward rock. Adelai's braced. The air smelled of rain and lamp oil and inevitability. Then Clement, Jasper of all fools, stomped onto the porch waving a lantern. Now see here, he blustered, spittle flying. This is my establishment. You take your quarrel elsewhere, or I charge lodging fees ×2. He thrust the lantern like a scepter. Avery whipped a pistol, shot the lantern from Jasper's hand. Flame burst across porch boards. Jasper shrieked, fell backward into Shea whiskey crates. Oil blossomed along floor planks, licking toward Jasper Spur's heart. Time slowed for Adelai's. She saw fire arrow across the trail of oil she had poured, felt heat hit her cheek, smelled rye flash. And she made a choice. # baptism by flame. She stepped from cover, sighted the Spencer on Avery's wrist mid-recoil, and fired. The .5650 slug hit meat. Avery's gun spun away. He howled, clutching shredded forearm. Chaos detonated. Shaw dove sideways, yanking Jasper clear of flames while drawing and shooting in one seamless dance. Wit's hat leapt off as a bullet grazed crown. Lyle scrambled for cover, firing wild with left hand. Men outside loosed a ragged volley. Windows shattered, glass spraying Adelai's hair. A round smacked the cast iron stove behind her. Ricochet whining. She levered another round, aimed at the dynamite saddlebag. Don't ignite, she prayed, squeezing. The slug punctured leather, tore sticks loose, sent them tumbling into dust. Inert for now but scattering riders. Inside, whiskey-fed fire sprinted across floorboards toward the oil pool. Heat punched Adelai's lungs. Bucket line. A patron yelled, but panic scattered them. Shaw dragged Jasper behind the bar, kicked a barrel of stale beer onto the spreading flames. Hiss and ugly steam. Part of the fire died, but tongues kept seeking new fuel. Wit used the distraction. He lunged through smoke, tackling Shaw. They crashed into a table. The Colt skittered away under swinging doors. Wit's knife flashed. Adelise vaulted the bar, Spencer now empty. She snatched Shaw's fallen Colt, heavier, grip warm from his hand, and trained it. But the writhing pair offered no clean shot. Wit slashed, Shaw twisted, knife grazing ribs. A thin red gash opened on shirt. Adelise started closer, intent on but stroking Wit's skull. Lyle, seeing her flank, raised his good hand's revolver. A dog lunged, the blue healer, clamping teeth on Lyle's ankle. He screamed, shot errant into ceiling tin. Adelise slammed Colt butt across his temple. Bone met steel. Lyle crumpled. She pivoted to Shaw. He and Wit grappled near the burning oil line. Shaw's back arched, muscles straining. Wit powered a fist into Shaw's wounded ribs. Shaw faltered. Adelise squeezed the Colt's trigger. Click. Empty. Shaw must have fired last bullet earlier. Wit saw her, eyes crazed. He shoved Shaw into the oil slick and came for her, knife glinting. Adelise threw the useless pistol. It smacked Wit's cheekbone, knocking his aim. She dove over a chair, rolled, snatched a broken bottle. Wit stalked, bleeding from scalp, boots splashing flame-rimmed oil. Behind him, fire raced the length of bar towards spilled lantern glass. Heat shimmered. "Run, girl," Wit taunted. "Ghost can't save you now." Adelise raised the bottle neck. Her pulse roared louder than flames. She thought of all the time she'd swallowed humiliation to survive. Tonight she spat it back. Wit lunged. She sidestepped, letting his momentum carry. She slammed glass into his knife wrist. Blood sprayed. Knife clanged away. Wit screamed, whirled, backhanding her across mouth. She tasted copper. He grabbed her collar, dragging her toward the door and the gunman outside. A living shield, Shaw cuffing smoke, rose behind them. Adelise met his gaze over Wit's shoulder, silent. Coordination forged in seconds that felt like years. She stomped Wit's instep, jerked downward. He doubled. Shaw launched, tackling him across the threshold onto the boardwalk, away from growing inferno. Outside, riders regathered. Seeing Wit down, Avery wounded, Lyle unconscious, they hesitated. A man named Polk brandished dynamite. "Toss it." Avery wheezed, gripping bandaged arm. "Torch the whole damn nest." Polk lit the fuse. Shaw's Colt lay empty. Adelise's Spencer unfired. Wit grappled her legs, laughing through blood. She kneed his jaw, scrambled free, snatched the Colt again. She lunged through smoke, grabbed the gun belt still around Shaw's waist. Spare rounds looped there. Her father had taught speed load, thumb, spin, hammer half-cock, cylinder feed. She jammed two, snapped cylinder closed, cocked, fuse. Burned bright in Polk's hand. Shaw shoved Wit aside, shouting asterisk down. Asterisk it to patrons who still gawked. Adelise aimed, all or nothing, squeezed out the bullet struck Polk's wrist. Dynamite flew, fuse spitting arcs, landing in the horse trough. Hiss, fuse died. Water geysered, smoke, screams, hoofbeats. The leftover enforcers bolted. Some dragged Avery, others grabbed Lyle's limp form. They fled north, into darkness. Beyond lamplight, only Wit remained, sprawled on dusty boards, hands shredded, laughter replaced by ragged sobs. Flames climbed Jasper Spur's columns behind him, lighting his face hellish orange. Exodus Shaw yanked a rain barrel, doused porch pillars. Adelise hauled bucket after bucket from the trough, beating at sparks. Patrons rallied, forming a line. Within minutes, flames subsided to blackened timber and steam. Inside, smoke curled from rafters, but Major Blaze had died with the beer barrel. Broken bottles littered floor like crystal hail. The piano sagged, strings popped by heat. Clement Jasper, singed but breathing, surveyed ruin with a strangled moan. "My saloon." He looked at Adelise, equal parts gratitude and accusation. "You brought this." Her cheeks burned. Before she spoke, Shaw intervened. "No, Jasper, I did. My past, my pursuers." He scanned damage, shoulders heavy. "I'll pay what coin I have, see repairs done. But tonight, these people need shelter." He turned to the rattled patrons. Town hall's empty. Someone fetched the keys. Deputy Rourke, a thin man usually posted at the jail, appeared with wrists locking Wit into irons. "We'll need statements." "Come morning," he said, voice shakier than barrel hoops. "Judge rides in next week." Shaw nodded, but his eyes never left Adelise. She realized her hands trembled, adrenaline drainage. Black powder soot streaked her sleeves. Dogs pressed against her shins, seeking assurance. Jasper bustled off, cursing, retrieving salvageable bottles. Rourke marched Wit toward jail. Patrons dispersed, some shaking Shaw's hand, others patting Adelise's shoulder with murmured "Thanks, ma'am." That sounded stunned by her audacity, when only the two of them and the dogs remained amid ruin. Shaw finally spoke, voice soft. "You saved a town full of strangers. She shook her head. Saved my supper table. A wry attempt at humor, but emotion thickened her throat. He chuckled, wincing as ribs protested. Blood seeped through shirt where knife had grazed. Adelise reached, tugged fabric aside, assessing. Need stitches. Doc'll see me, but he made no move toward the door. Instead he looked around. Bar charred, stools upended, her ironwood seat still upright amid debris. I've ruined your job, Miss Hartwell. She managed a weary smile. Ran its course. The dogs were better company anyway. She scratched the healer's ear, let the moment breathe. Shaw's gaze slipped to her split lip, the bruise forming on her cheek. I'm sorry, he murmured. Don't be. Her voice steadied. I made my choice. She met his eyes, seeing layers, contrition, fatigue, something else flickering like dawn behind storm clouds. Footsteps approached. Deputy Rourke returned, hat in hand. Jail's full tonight. Whit clammed up. Judge'll handle it. But folks, reckon them Horace boys'll ride back once they lick wounds. He looked between them. Town owes you both. But we ain't got cannons. Shaw accepted the grim truth. They'll return with more guns, maybe torches. Need strategy by sunup. He placed hand on Adelise's shoulder, gentle, yet grounding. You fought like cavalry tonight. Will you help me finish this? An absurd question. She could board the next stage, vanish. But the saloon floor still smelled of corn cakes and spilled rye. The dogs trusted her. And a stranger had pulled up. A stool when she sat in the dirt. Elise Hartwell squared her shoulders. I'll help, she said. But first we treat that knife wound. Then we make a map of every alley, rooftop, and water barrel in Rutledge Crossing. She lifted the empty Spencer, thumbed latch open, and we find more shells. Shaw's answering. Smile was small, tired, but genuine. A soldier's mind, he said. My father's coat. She glanced at the cavalry jacket still draped chair back. Picked up more than pipe tobacco scent. She started for the door, dogs trotting. Then paused, looking back at the stool, charred leg, but standing. Leave it, Shaw advised, reading her thought. Souvenir of the night alliances changed. She nodded, stepped into cool night air tinged with fresh doused ash and distant coyote yip. Above, stars burned white holes in the velvet sky, indifferent witnesses. Yet in their silent testimony, she felt the stir of something vast destiny. Maybe, or simply consequence. Behind her, Shaw blew out the last unbroken lantern, plunging the jasper spur into darkness. Tomorrow, he said to her shadow, we set the terms of this war. Adelise did not flinch at the word. Battles wore many. Shapes, some fought with Colts and Spencer carbines, others with ironwood stools and a refusal to eat in the dirt. Tonight had proven she owned the grit for either dot as they crossed the street toward Doc Merriweather's modest surgery. Lanterns flickered along boardwalks, townsfolk peering from doorways, fear mixed with newfound respect. Children whispered. One little girl clapped, quickly shushed by her mother. Shaw's silhouette beside her looked every inch the ghost-long coat fluttering. Revolver holstered but still smoke-scented. Yet Adelise sensed more man than legend. Breathing, bleeding, haunted, she touched her swollen lip, tasted iron, and realized something startling. For the first time since she'd boarded the stage at Benson's Ferry, she was not calculating how to flee the next sunrise. She was plotting how to stand. Somewhere behind them, boards collapsed in the saloon, sending a puff of ember sparks upward that died before reaching sky. She didn't turn. The future awaited ahead. They mounted the surgery steps. Shaw paused. Hand on the rail, face angling toward east horizon where first hint of dawn sketched pale lavender. Day's coming, he said. Elise nodded. Let's make sure we're still here to greet it. She opened the door. Inside, Doc Merriweather barked. Orders, clearing a table. Shaw shrugged out of coat, winced as blood stuck fabric to skin. Adelise helped, fingers brushing old scar across his shoulder. a puckered line that told a tale for another night. Doc poured carbolic. Shaw hissed. Adelaize gripped his forearm till knuckles whitened, giving steadiness, borrowing courage. The dogs curled near the stove, finally sleeping. As Merriweather stitched, Shaw spoke quiet conspiracies. If we dam the Arroyo culvert, flood the East Road, their horses bog. Old telegraph lines, we can rig trip snares. Need powder, check Galloway's quarry. Adelaize absorbed each word, her mind sketching maps. Stitches done, Shaw stood, sway-legged. You rest, Doc ordered, pushing them onto cot. Soon, he conceded. But first, Ms. Hartwell and I draft a plan. His eyes found hers, weary yet fierce. Horace Company's coming, and this time the ghost won't stand alone. Adelaize's answering smile felt foreign on her battered face, a smile built of smoke and future steel. No, she agreed. He won't. She unrolled parchment from Doc's desk, dipped quill. Lines became streets, X's became choke points. Outside, the crawling lavender deepened toward rose. They worked until dawn's first true. Beam crossed the window and laid gold on their ink, stained. Hands. Only then did Shaw lean back, eyes half shuttered, and whisper, more to himself than her. Every stand begins with a single stool. Adelaize capped the ink, meeting his gaze over the map's edge. Then let's put stools at every doorway of this town. He laughed, a raw, cracked sound that somehow promised tomorrow. In the hush that followed, Rutledge Crossing held its breath, a town forked between ruin and rebirth, waiting to see which would claim sunrise. And from the ridge beyond the cemetery, a telescopic sight glinted, tracking the light in the doctor's window before lowering into shadow, unseen, unvoiced, but certain. The Horace Mining Company's real answer was already inbound. A cold wind lifted as sun cleared the mountains, carrying with it dust, the scent of blood-quenched fire, and a promise of reckoning. Adelaize Hartwell squared her shoulders, ink drying under her nails. The reckoning could come when it pleased. She would be ready. Dawn shook itself fully awake over Rutledge Crossing, like a hound rising from slumber's slow stretch across the desert, jaws opening in a crimson yawn. The first true sunlight glamored the town's battered false fronts into something almost respectable, gilding bullet scars and broken shutters, hiding ruin beneath radiant illusion. But inside the doctor's surgery, reality clung to every breath. A tinny jitter of coffee cups rattling on the pot-bellied stove marked the hour after sunrise. Doc Merriweather moved between his patients in a kind of rolling hobble, right knee stiff from winter's spent riding range. He checked stitches at Shaw's ribs, then the butterfly plysteri strips Adelaize had set across her own split lip. The dogs blew, the healer, and Brim, the crook-tailed mutt, dozed under Shaw's cot, bellies rounding content after scraps scavenged from Doc's jerky jar. Map parchment still carpeted the trestle table, weighted at corners by spent shells, and one chipped porcelain mug. Adelaize dared not lift a hand too quickly for fear the fragile sense of order might scatter with the papers. Every street, alley, and rooftop in Rutledge Crossing had been inked blue for elevation points, red for firing corridors, dotted lines for potential barricades. Shaw's handwriting precise, upright, military-marked angles with small equations. Adelaize's broader, looping added notations about townsfolk skill sets. Asterisk Lizzie Tyne seamstress, keeps shotgun under dress form. Amos Crick wheelwright, good with pulleys. Sister O'Hara organist, steady nerves under pressure. Asterisk Doc cleared his throat, drawing their attention. Stitching's clean, but if he tears that wound again, I'll be sewing during his funeral. Keep movements measured. Shaw inclined his head, tutored, obedient. Adelaize doubted he would follow the advice for long. Still, she appreciated the illusion. She folded her arms, alleviating weight off her bruised ribs. We have hours, maybe, not days. They'll regroup, bigger guns, more riders. Horace Company won't swallow losing face. Shaw exhaled, the sound carrying gravel. He had slept. Perhaps half an hour. The soft relax of his features had told Adelise. But she'd kept watch, tracing lines on the map by lamplight. When he stirred, she pretended she'd never paused. Now facing morning's immensity, they shared fatigue like comrades pass a canteen turn-about turns. No complaint. Captain Avery's arms half ruined, Shaw said, voice low enough. Blue's ear twitched, thinking he'd been called. He'll need a surgeon or at least laudanum. That slows them. Slows, Doc repeated. Doesn't stop. Railroad telegraphs 20 miles east. They'll wire for reinforcements from their Tucson office. We cut the line, Adelise offered. It rides the same poles as County Depot line. Easy reach from Ridge. Shaw eyed her, seeing the shade of flint in her suggestion he had not glimpsed before. Cutting telegraph invites federal martial interest, but so will a massacre. Do it. She didn't lose a beat. Crick's boy Willis can climb like a lizard. We'll send him with tools. Pencil flew across map. Telegraph cut at mile marker 179. Doc scratched scalp. Town council won't like sabotage. Council can draft petitions after they bury children. Shaw fired back, tone colder than kettle. Regret flickered, but he didn't soften. Morning meeting outside church steps. We need every able body briefed before Horace arrives. Hush, 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 the gathering. The chapel bell tolled 8 as folk converged between dusty pewter shadows, cast by false fronts. 50 souls. Maybe 60 if one counted toddlers on hips and Uncle Peabody who shuffled. More than walked but still clutched the Springfield his grandpappy cleaned after Shiloh. They ringed the street like a horseshoe, eyes shifting from Shaw's bandaged side to Adelise's bruising cheek, to the splintered saloon doors glaring behind them like knocked-out teeth. Reverend Carlyle, stoop-shouldered but voice thunderous, opened in prayer. Halfway through, Shaw raised hand gently. Reverend, time's tight. Carlyle swallowed offense, nodded. Shaw stepped onto an upturned ammunition crate property of Galloway's quarry, rested both palms across his thigh to steady voice. Horace Mining Company means to own these hills. He began scanning faces. Last night they tried to buy my blood. When that failed, they tried to burn you for sheltering me. He nudged the crate with boot. They'll be back. Murmurs, fright etched. Adelise stood at edge of the circle, arms crossed, feeling. Those murmurs run through her bones but refusing shiver. Shaw continued. You have 3 choices, flee, hide, or fight. Flee and you'll lose everything built here. Hide and they'll find you, sooner or later, because folks talk and Horace buys tongues. Fight. He let the word linger, heavy as iron. Fight, and you tell them Rutledge Crossing is not for sale. Jeb Fisher, rancher big as hay baler, spat dust. Preacher, my kid's still coughing smoke from your war. Why wouldn't we put you on a mule and send you north? Adelise felt the sting like a lash. She bit tongue, waited. Shaw met Jeb's glare unflinching. Because Avery will ride anyway. Rage, bounty, and orders from men who never dirty boots. Horace wants those hills cleared for cyanide leach pits. Today it's me. Tomorrow it's the Wells farm, then your range. He nodded toward the distant copper-blue mountains. They mark a line. We either draw it ourselves or let them. Silence perched like a vulture. Lizzie Tyne stepped forward, wiry pincushion on wrist even now. Show us how. That broke dam. Questions surged. How many rifles? How many men? What about women, children? Shaw answered each, voice level, bearing the mantle of command he'd once thrown away. Adelise distributed sketch copies of the map Doc had helped trace at dawn. Fuel. Barrels retrieved from quarry, nails to spike rails. Medicine stores counted. And watch shifts assigned. She felt her own authority grow by deed, as if every stride across dust etched her name deeper into town lore. By 9. Tasks assigned. The crowd dissolved into purposeful currents, women filling flour sacks with sand for barricades. Cowhands dragging wagon tongues to cross-brace alley entrances. The organist Sister O'Hara, recruiting lads to heft the chapel's cast-iron stove onto a flatbed as Mobile Shield. Shaw and Adelise remained, planning the last most dangerous element forward reconnaissance. High noon advance, the desert. Floor shimmered as they rode out Shaw astride a rangy dun called Bristle. Adelise on a borrowed paint mare named Penny Dreadful for her unpredictable temper. Blue trailed ahead, nose low, while Brim guarded rear flank, tail crooked in a question. Mark mounted felt like stepping into old skin for Adelise. Years since she'd taken a horse through open wash, but muscle memory guided seat. Shaw watched her hold rein, not approving. "You ride cavalry seat." "My father drilled 6 children same as recruits." A quirk of a smile. "We lost 3. Before the war, 2 after. I got the coat and the notion to stay alive." Shaw quieted, reading grief beneath words. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. The desert said enough about loss. They crested the ridge overlooking the telegraph line. Willis Crick already perched halfway up the pole, hatchet between teeth. He waved. Shaw signaled caution, 2 fingers circle, then point. On horizon, dust plume, riders approaching fast. Companies faster than hoped. Shaw muttered dot at a lease-raised field glass borrowed from Reverend Carlyle's Civil War chest. 12 riders, fresh mounts, 1 small covered wagon. Colors on hats weren't cavalry, private hire still. She noticed glint rifles and something angled weird tripod mount. Maybe. Shaw followed her gaze. They brought a Gatling. Her stomach knotted. Those steel barrels could chew men into raw cloth. She snapped glass shut. "We can't hold Main Street against that. Then we don't give them an avenue." Shaw spurred Bristle to pole base, hailed Willis. "Cut both wires, west and east. Then head home fast." Cables dropped like serpents. The distant riders gained arrow-like. Dust hung behind them like unfurling war banner. Shaw guided horse into Arroyo South crest. Adelise followed, heart hammering. They dismounted behind. A stand of Ocotillo, letting horses graze dry tufts while dust plume thundered by ridge highline. She licked lips. "We're ahead but not by hours." He checked Colt cylinder, fresh loads gleaming. Enough time to set welcome mat. He gestured to saddlebag, blast-in caps, short fuse, quarry dynamite sticks made from sawdust and nitroglycerin, temperamental but lethal. Adelise raised brow. "Doc's heartbeat will stop if you handle those wrong." "I plan on handling them exactly wrong, from Horace's perspective." They knelt, carving shallow pit in arroyo floor at a bend where road funneled close to rock shelf. Shaw laid 2 sticks, fused short, wired to a lanyard loop of telegraph wire. Adelise stacked rocks to mask. Blue watched tail swishing, unimpressed. "Trip wire at axle height," she suggested, weaving cable between mesquite trunks. Shaw secured free end to lanyard. Gust stirred dust, eyes narrowed. He stood wiping grit. One handshake from those wheels, and the gorge'll echo. "Might not stop Gatling, but will spook horses by minutes." She studied his profile scar along jaw, days of road dust stubble. "Why they call you preacher?" He paused, half smile. "Because I buried ghosts before they could bury me." Said words over them after. He looked farther west, voice losing any humor. "Lost good men at Kendra Gorge. Horace Mine Security claimed our water rights. Shot at civilians. Father Duggan tried to mediate, got killed. I returned favor. Folks called me ghost, preacher, outlaw, depends who tells it." "Which story is yours?" "Still writing." He tucked wire cutters. "With help." His eyes locked hers, gratitude and a flicker she couldn't name. She felt cheeks warm under desert glare, turned away, focusing on blue paw and dust. Afternoon labors, they returned by noon. The town buzzed, a hive forging stingers. Every vantage turned into fortification. The mill roof became sniper. Perch, the bakery's bread carts flipped as breastwork. Stable doors now iron-rimmed barricades. Sister O'Hara's choir of children filled flour sacks with gravel, lugging them in solemn processions. Adelise fell into line, instructing placements. She commandeered 3 teenage girls to fill lanterns with watered kerosene, plenty smoke, less explosion, and string them on rooftop ropes. Signal line, she explained. Pull, lantern drops, ground team sees flash. Kids nodded, gleeful at secret agent glamour. Shaw, ignoring Doc's pleas, climbed ladders, appraised firing lanes, adjusted sight lines. He paused outside. The schoolhouse where Widow Blanchett had delivered crates of homemade torches soaked in pine resin. He thanked her. She touched his arm softly. Fear and hope mingled in powder-scented lace glove. Lunch happened in passing hardtack. Jerky, water from newly cleaned rain barrels. Adelise forced Blue and Brim to rest in shade. Their tongues lolled, yet they refused leave her shadow. Animals knew storms. By mid-afternoon, heat shimmered like furnace. Deputy Rourke trotted up, hat askew. Telegraph line east is down. Stage from Tucson stuck at way station with military payroll. Captain Avery can't call for cavalry. Good, Shaw said, but worry threaded brows. Still gives Horace men, wagons, Gatling. Rourke whistled low. Gatling? Saw one once. Mexican war surplus. Turned adobe to chalk. Adelise joined them. We collapse alley between Coop and Farrier. Funnel wagon onto mains pitchboards. Weight won't hold metal monster. She pointed at map section highlighted in charcoal. They bring it. Boards break. Gatling sinks. Rourke grinned admiration. Smart. He raced off to relay carpenters. Shaw's tired chuckle. I thought of removing boards. Your idea punishes them for ignorance. She shrugged. I learned from dogs, sometimes you must let the trapper step in his own snare. Hashtag dusk dash. The calm false promise sun lowered, dragging copper across iron ridges. Shadows stretched, blending barricades into natural clutter. Crickets started timid choir. Doc forced them into church vestry for last medical prep. Stretched white linen on pew planks, arranged carbolic, sutures, bandages. If Gatling sings, we'll run out of cloth, he grumbled. Sister O'Hara retrieved altar cloths for makeshift bandages. Adelise scrubbed hands raw in basin. Refusing to picture bodies she would wrap. Shaw hovered, wanting to assist but needing to command. She glimpsed him at door, silhouette rimmed by stained glass orange like a penitent warrior begging sanctuary from his own war. He caught her gaze. You should rest 1 hour. So should you. They didn single quotes T. Instead they found themselves back at ruined Jasper, spur as twilight bled purple. The saloon stank of char and soaked beer, but enough floor remained to set 2 chairs. They sat among rubble, dogs at feet. Through missing wall slats they watched townsfolk lighting storm lamps, faces painted gold. Ed Elise broke silence. I was 8 when Pa died at Fort Bowie. Ma went 2 winters later, lung rot. Brother Harlan sold the farm for liquor, told me to marry any fellow offering pie. I ran instead. She traced crack in floorboard. Been running since. Shaw listened, no interruption. I chose this town because stage ticket was cheapest. I planned to keep head down, count coins, maybe catch next stage farther west. Didn't reckon on dogs or Stool or you. She met his eyes. What I'm saying, if tomorrow ends with marsh fires and unmarked graves, I regret only not knowing sooner how to stand still. Shaw leaned forward, elbows to knees. I killed men at Kendera because they threatened women, children, under church flag. I told myself that made it righteous, but blood doesn't care purpose. I fled here to bury ghosts in whiskey and prayer. Last night I realized ghosts don't rest, they just wait. His gaze softened. But seeing you face wit with nothing but a broken bottle makes me believe maybe ghosts can learn. She brushed hair behind ear, pulse tripping. Learn what? To trust the living, he said simply. They shared small smile, fragile as lamp flame, footsteps scuffed porch. Reverend Carlyle cleared throat. Scouts sighted dust southwest. Companies less than an hour. They rose, the moment folded away, replaced by steel and posture. Dogs sensed shift, ears pricking. Positions. Shaw ordered. Hash, 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 the return of Horace. The company arrived at full dark, no moon, only cold stars and lantern glow. But Rutledge Crossing saw them first. Lantern dropped from rooftop ropes signaled along. Line thunk swish like falling constellations. Men in alleys whispered counts. Women in upper windows chambered rifles. At Elise crouched behind overturned bread cart barricade at Main and Cooper. She wore Pa's cavalry coat buttoned, Spencer loaded, Colt newly cleaned from Shaw's kit on hip. She felt alive, present in skin, heart steady. Shaw stationed himself on mill roof, best vantage to command. Rourke flanked. The dogs stayed with Adelaide's blue rigid alert, Brim shivering excitement. Hoofbeats slowed. Avery's voice ran hoarse from laudanum but carrying. Town of Rutledge Crossing. By authority of Horace Mining Company, we demand surrender of the man called Shaw, alias Ghost of Kendera. Lay down arms. Present him at street center. No one answered. Avery continued, listing punishments. Property seizure, arson, hanging. He rolled threats off tongue like psalms of wrath. Shaw raised signal flag, a scrap of linen on stick visible to hidden riflemen along mill eaves. He waited until Avery's wagon reached Arroyo Bend half-mile south, the dynamite trap. Dust plume slowed. Wagon axle kissed telegraph wire, snick trigger pulled, thunder blossomed. Fireball lit desert canyon, horses screaming, Gatling wagon flipping on side. Echoes cracked hills. Town dwellers cheered low grunts, but more riders encircled 15 or 20, splitting front and flanks. Avery's fury echoed. Burn them out. Torches lifted Dot from livery rooftop. Widow Blanchett's son launched first lantern mortar kerosene bomb, improvised from mason jar arcing bright path, exploding in riders' midst. Horses scattered, 2 men thrown. Then lightning tore from darkness, rat-tat salvo. The Gatling hadn't died. Second unit on horseback fired a Colt Browning crank gun jury-rigged to saddle. Bullets stitched bakery facade, sending shingles flying. Shaw shouted orders, positions shift, stay low. Sister O'Hara rang chapel bell in coded pattern. Asterisk enemy heavy center. Light flank. Asterisk town fighters rotated, as drilled. Adelaide's hugged barricade. Gatling peppered her bread cart, wood splintering. Like hail, she waited lull of reload crank, then popped up, firing Spencer twice at muzzle flashes. She saw one gunner topple backward, neck blooming red. Avery's men tried advancing along side alley. They met gravel sack barricade and Lizzie Tyne wielding shotgun like Taylor's shears, cutting swath. Amos Crick released cartwheel ramp. Collapsing alley wall upon 3 riders. Bullets sang, glass shattered, screens merged with horse whinnies. Fire arrows lobbed, sticking in awnings. Bucket brigades doused before flame spread. Adelaide spotted wit among riders, arm and sling butt. Face manic, brandishing rifle left hand. He looked right at her, recognition flaring hate. He spurred toward bakery flank, aiming to breach boards covering side door. She switched Colt, fired twice. One slug punched his saddle horn, second snapped reins, horse reared. Wit crashed into mud. He rose, limping, vanished behind coupe. She tracked, vaulting barricade, blew at heel. Brim remained, guarding gap. Alley reeked of chicken droppings and black powder smoke. Moon slid from clouds, casting pallid light. Wit lurked near grain. Sacks, rifle barrel glimmering. She crept lateral, heartbeat calm, strange clarity of battle. Blue growled low. She whispered cease. A board creaked. Wit swung muzzle. Adelaide's dove left, Colt blasting, slug shredding burlap feed. Grain spilled, dust plume clouding air. Whip fired blind boom slug smashing coop roof. She rolled behind watering trough, snapped cylinder one round left. Footsteps receded. Whit. Retreating. She risked peak. He stumbled toward Gatling wagon ruin, maybe regrouped to fire town from rear. She couldn't allow. Blue barked. In bark she heard decision. Together they pursued through alley network, sights unseen by main fight. The East Arroyo. Whit reached Arroyo lip dotted with scrub. Broken Gatling wagon smoldered below, brass casings glittering in embers. He crouched behind boulder. Reloading revolver with shaking hand, Adelai's halted 30 yards uphill. Blue crept to her side, low profile. She weighed options, one bullet, dog, darkness. She thought of Shaw on mill roof, of children hiding under church pews, of Ma coughing blood. She stood tall, Whit. She called. He jolted, swinging gun. She stepped into moonlight. Town's done with you. He laughed, edged crazy. Town's burnt. Ghost next, you. Just some kitchen drudge playing soldier. I'm the soul you tried to terrorize over stew. She raised Colt. Lower. Weapon. He fired first. She dropped flat, slug whining overhead. She aimed, squeezed click, misfire, last round misseated. She cursed, rolled into mesquite. Whit advanced, mania in eyes, rifle ready. Blue shot from shadows, teeth clamping Whit's calf. He screamed, kicked, slugging dog with gun stock. Blue yelped but held. Adelais scrambled, found fallen pickaxe handle from mining debris. She charged, swinging. Wood connected with Whit's temple thud like splitting melon. He staggered, Blue released. Whit swung wildly, rifle discharging into sky. Adelais struck again, jaw, ribs, until Whit crumpled unconscious. She panted. Dropping handle, Blue limped to her side, licking own wound. She knelt, checked Whit's pulse alive. She tied wrists with gun belt, dragged him uphill. Blue assisted by tugging coat sleeve. Back on main turning tide return, revealed battle shifting. Gatling saddle gun had jammed. Its riders lay dead under mill wall. Avery's remaining force 8 men, wagon crew clustered near collapsed. Board section, pinned by rifle crossfire. Fires smoldered but controlled. Townfolk pressed advantage. At a lease secured. Whit to lamppost, shouted update. Gatling neutralized. Enemy numbers down. Cheers answered, but Avery's men answered. With flare-green starburst streaking sky, Shaw's voice cut through din, fear sharper than command. Flare is signal, more riders inbound. Indeed, thunder answered North Ridge, spewing silhouettes reinforcements earlier than predicted. 20 at least, maybe 30. Too many. Shaw scrambled roof crenellation to adjust defense. Adelais. Scaled ladder opposite flank, joined. Sweat streaked his dusty face. Bandage darkening, but he fought on. They'll breach. Adelais handed Spencer with fresh rounds. We withdraw to chapel? He scanned horde. Chapel too small. Need. Final stand at Creek Bridge, East Narrow choke point. He hollered at Rourke. Phase 2. Pull to bridge. Signal bell changed cadence, clang, clang rest clan evac pattern. Fighters peeled from barricades in disciplined retreat, covering each other. Shaw descended ladder. Adelais slid down after. They herded townsfolk toward East Road, pulling. Wounded in handcarts. Blue barked, guiding stragglers. Behind. Horus reinforcements galloped into streets, torches raised, triumphant cries. Buildings still stood but would not long. At last line, Shaw detonated black powder charges set earlier along boardwalk. Blasts shredded troughs, throwing splinters, forcing horses rear. Delay precious, but Avery's men regrouped, pressed. The bridge of bones east of town, a narrow wooden bridge, spanned Dry Creek bed 10 feet drop. 30 feet long, rails of sun-bleached cedar. Crick's wheelwright crew had spent afternoon packing support posts with kegs of old blasting powder, laid planks loose for quick pry. Civilians, children, wounded crossed first, hustled beyond ridge where Reverend led them into arroyo shelters. Fighters formed firing line on West Bank. Shaw, Adelise, Jeb, Lizzie, Amos, Widow Blanchett, Rourke, half-dozen others. They had maybe 40 rifles, 2 hunting muskets, scarce ammunition. Shaw set crates as breastwork. He addressed line, hold, until rest safe, then fall back south gully. I'll light fuse. Adelise caught his sleeve. Not alone, you're hurt. He smiled tired. Harder for Ghost to die than for Stool Girl. She didn't release. We're beyond Stools. And you said trust living. He relented, nodded. We light together. Hoofbeats neared. Moon hid again behind clouds battlefield painted ink. Rifles muzzle flash lightning. Horus riders appeared. Torches flaming, gun barrels sparking. Gatling replaced by multiple Winchester repeaters. Avery arm bandaged rode in front, fury. Incandescent, kill them all, take no prisoners. He roared. First volley from town line blazed. Horses screamed, stumbled, but enemy momentum relentless. Leads zipped like hornets. Widow Blanchett fell, shoulder pulped. Amos dragged her back. Sister O'Hara knelt, praying over bleeding young stable boy. Adelise fired Spencer until barrel. Shuddered hot. She saw Avery aiming carbine at Shaw. She knocked Shaw sideways, shot Avery's mount. Horse collapsed, pinning captain. Chaos. Shaw crawled to kegs, struck match. Fuse hissed faint snake. He looked at Adelise's eyes asking if ready. She nodded, heart steel. They retreated across planks, covering each other. Blue and Brim bounded ahead. Fuse burned quick. Enemy riders surged onto bridge, hooves pounding. Timpani of doom. Adelise vaulted last yard, rolled behind earthwork. Shaw followed, bullet slashing hat brim. Boom. The night ripped open. Bridge erupted in geyser of splinter and fire. Horseflesh, timber, gun barrels spun skyward. Shockwave bucked defenders. Smoke-choked canyon, when noise fell to ringing hush. The creek bed was rubble and writhing shapes. Enemy lines shattered, some scrambled, some silent. Avery's fate unknown in dust swirl. Shaw coughed, voice raw. Fall back to ridge regroup. Fighters rallied, hoisted wounded, staggered up slope. But from smoke came a new sound, metallic clank chains. Out of debris rolled the covered wagon. From earlier those scorched, wheels alive. 2 men inside cranked something second Gatling. They had towed backup unit around trapline via dry wash. Barrels spun, spitting hell. Rourke caught 3 slugs, thrown backwards. Jeb Fisher's had exploded red. Screens rent air. Adelise ducked behind boulder, heart hammering. Gatling advanced slowly, Iron Devil relentless. Town line unraveled. Children up ridge, shrieked. Shaw grabbed her shoulder. I go, flank right, draw fire. She seized his coat. You'll be minced. He looked feral determined. Better one ghost than a valley of innocence. He tried to pull away, but she held iron grip. Ghost dies, legend ends, she hissed, voice near breaking. But hope dies too. We do this together, or not at all. He stared, conflict raging. Then nodded reluctant. Together they crawled. Left, using rocks as cover, skirting the wagon's blind side. Bullets ripped overhead. Gatling paused as crew reloaded belt. Shaw rose, popped 2 shots, drew attention. Gunners pivoted barrels, firing scatter, missing. Adelise sprinted behind, reached wagon tailgate, hoisted herself silently. Inside she saw a crate of ammunition, a lantern, 2 sweaty gunners oblivious. She kicked lantern onto ammo. Sparks kissed powder. She flung herself backward off tail as Shaw dove behind wheel. A voom. Wagon blossomed firestorm. Ammunition cooking off in chain pops. Gunners vanished in conflagration. Shockwave staggered horses uphill. Townsfolk cheered ragged, but triumph cut short. Another flare-streaked sky, red this time. Shaw cursed. Third wave. Attles wiped soot from brow, disbelief curdled. How many men does Horus command? He shook head. Not men, perseverance of greed. Red flare. Answered by distant echo steam whistle. They turned. Far on horizon, engine sparks, the mining company's private railcar pushing small flatbed mounting something large. Maybe field cannon. She felt knees tremble at magnitude. Town resources bled. Ammunition nearly spent. Many wounded. Sun would rise to genocide. Shaw squeezed her soot-smeared hand. We still breathe. As long as we breathe, fight adapts. She swallowed despair. Any idea left? The lightning that crowned the half-finished Aravepa Dam faded into a blue-white afterimage across Adelai's Hartwell's vision, but the echo of the thunder stayed lodged inside her ribs. It boomed there like a second stubborn heartbeat, one that refused to let her forget how narrow the path between courage and calamity had become. She reined Penny Dreadful to a stop beneath a twisted cottonwood, 30 yards downslope from the dam's eastern parapet. The mare snorted, skin twitching at the hiss of oncoming rain. Shaw guided Bristle in beside them, drawing a circle in the dust with the tip of his boot, habit born of years, making rough maps in rougher country. The dogs settled at their paws, Blue's ears low, Brim's crooked tail beating softly against a rock as if he didn't yet grasp exactly how much death they had dragged along behind them into the darkness down between the riders and the dam. Breast stood a low fence of barbed wire and timber. Beyond that, a graded service road looped upward in 2 lazy switchbacks before squaring onto the clay wall that penned the new reservoir like a swollen promise. The Horus Mining Company had planted 3 guard sheds along that service road, each occupied by 2 men gambling runoff pay in the bored lamplight while water crept higher behind them. Shaw pointed to the first shed closest to their position, little more than a shed roof nailed over 4 posts and a keg of kerosene. 2 guards, 1 rifle, 1 shotgun. The words rasped in his throat. Bandage on his ribs had bled through again, a dark blot pressing the clay-colored shirt. But his eyes were feral bright in the storm-laced night. We take them, quiet. Attles nodded, checking the Spencer's half-filled magazine. Only 5 rounds of .5650 remained. She would need to make them breathe thunder when the moment called. For now, knife would do. She slipped Pa's cavalry knife from its scabbard, laid the flat against her thigh. Their prisoner, Captain Avery, sat tied to the stump of a mesquite, wrists wrenched behind. The dogs watched him with ghost-green eyes. He spat onto the dirt. The saliva was pink with old blood. When the board finds you, he muttered, they'll brand your corpses with iron and hang them from rafters. Shaw crouched, voice a copper wire. Board can't find what the river takes. Avery's eyes flicked to the dam crest, to the growing black hump of water silhouetted behind. The threat stole his breath. Hash, 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 a map written in breath. They moved uphill in a chain of 3 blue, ghosting ahead like a scout. Attles 10 paces behind him, Shaw at her rear flank. Rain began to tick on the brim of her father's coat, soft at first, then in earnest. Each drop lifted the scent of mesquite and wildfire from the cooling night. The clouds roiled overhead, generous in their camouflage, blanketing the moon into a dull smear that made the world flat and intimate. At a knee-high shelf of sandstone, they paused to survey. The first guard shed glowed pale with lamplight that buzzed thick with moth wings. 2 silhouettes loomed inside one, seated on an overturned crate rolling dice on a blanket, the other leaning on the rail nursing a cigarette, smoke curling like a ghost's ribbon. Shotgun propped against the rail beside him, muzzle glistening in LAMPL. IGHT. Shaw whispered against Adeliza's ear. Knife the sitter. I'll take the smoker. Quiet. She felt the syllables buzz across her bruised lip. On my breath. They slid forward, low to the clay, rain cloaking the scrape of boots. At the barbed wire they parted left and right. Blue stayed belly low between them, ready to distract or draw. Adelise skirted wide until the shed sat oblique in her periphery. The gambler's hunched shoulders lit by yellow lamp, dice rattling, muttered curse. Closer. The storm crackled a sympathetic growl. She stepped against a support post, countered heartbeats. Saw Shaw's figure on the far rail, saw him grab the shotgun man's collar, jerk hard. The cigarette flew into the rain, a spark hissed out. The smoker's head thunked the support beam. Simultaneous, Adelise moved knife up, hand over mouth. The dice cup clattered once on the crate, a forlorn rattle. Then the gambler slumped sideways, breath leaving in a surprised wheeze and nothing more. Blue padded in, teeth gently tugging blanket over the men's faces as if tucking them in. Shaw retrieved the shotgun, snapping breech, freeing 2 blue paper shells. He offered the gun to Adelise. 12-gauge, buck, might need it. She slung it over her off shoulder, kept knife ready. Next shed? He nodded, wiping blood on his sleeve. Gardener pruning weeds. The rest won't go so gentle. Hesh, 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 the hornet's nest. The second guard shack perched where the switchback straightened beneath the dam wall proper. Here. Thick stone culverts channeled rivulets from the reservoir seep, and the company kept a small ammo chest under padlock. A bench of rough timbers offered view downhill. Stacked on it, 2 Winchester 73s and a battered field glass case. These weren't bored dice rollers. These watched. Shaw and Adelise crawled within earshot. They counted 4 men, 1 lantern. Shaw's bandage had soaked crimson. His breathing carried a wet rattle Adelise recognized from soldiers who'd fought too long. She gripped his wrist. You can't storm that bleeding. Must, he rasped, wiping rain and sweat from forehead. Damn keys in that lockbox. Need it. She considered the shotgun, the Spencer, the pistols with 2 rounds apiece. She calculated Notch's opportunity, risk. Then she extracted a tin of Doc's lamp oil wicks from her satchel, flashed a grin. Shaw answered with puzzled frown. She pressed a finger to her lips. Moments later, a swirl of desert wind carried a new smell up the grade, sharp, raw, acrid. 1 guard spat over the rail, nose wrinkling. What in blazes? Another sniffed, then cursed. Something's burning. They lifted lantern, stepping away from bench. On cue, a tongue of pale smoke slid from the culvert mouth, where Adelise had stuffed 3 oil wicks lit from the stolen lantern of shed 1. Rain dampened them enough to smolder rather than blaze. Perfect illusion. 2 guards ran downhill to inspect the seep. Shaw emerged from darkness behind the bench, Colt leveled. He shot the nearest man through thigh, dropping him silent. Adelise dashed from culvert shadow. Buckshot from the shotgun roared into the second man's ribs, burying lead. He never screamed. Blue leapt from side embankment to clamp teeth on the third's gun arm. The rifle flew away. Shaw clubbed that man with pistol butt. The final guard tried to chamber around. The brim latched onto his pant leg. Adelise's knife finished business. They breathed in the sudden stillness, rain pattering on tin roof. Shaw knelt at the padlocked chest. Blood from his ribs dribbled onto soil. He picked lock with gambler's dice cup, spoon handle, 2 tumbler clicks, lid sprang. Inside lay 6 wooden wedges, each stamped with brass number. Damn gate keys. He pocketed 2, tossed others into the seep stream. No pursuers must reset gates. Hash, 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 the threshold. The third and final watchpoint sat at the dam's crown, inside a corrugated iron hut bolted to concrete. Electric lamps glowed in its narrow windows. These men were awake, likely sober. Avery had croaked earlier that the upper post captain had insisted on hourly Morse lamp checks when tension-bound. Shaw's wound throbbed visible through shirt. He pressed cloth tight, but breath wheezed. Adelise braced his elbow. You fall, the town falls. He shook head, eyes bright. Ghosts don't fall till dawn. She sighed, then let the living do the heavy lifting. She pulled spare rounds from the pocket of her father's coat, sliding them into Colt cylinder. She slung the shotgun across Blue's back with a strap rigged from stirrup leather. "Carry," she whispered. Dog stood proud, living arsenal. They ascended final grade, hugging wall. Lightning unveiled the reservoir vast black plate, flecked with wind, pursed ripples. Rain hammered it, urging overflow. Adelais felt the power of it, millions of gallons straining clay like hounds at leash. If they broke the east relief gates, water would torrent down Aravaipa Gorge, ripping rail bed and cutting every mining spur for miles. But if they failed, Horace would turn this water into leech ponds, poisoning land for decades. She eyed Shaw. He read her thought. "We aim gates east, not south. Town is safe," he managed half-smile. "Mostly." They crawled to Hut's blind side, conversation inside. Captain Avery's flare must have called Tucson train. "Cannon's hours out, boys." "We hold." Rain slashed walls in gusts. Adelais counted 3, maybe 4 voices. Shaw pulled dynamite bundle from saddlebag, 2 sticks, short fuse. "Flash, bang, breach," he whispered. "You cover." She laid a hand across his, stopping him. "You have half a lung left, Shaw. Let me throw." He wanted to argue, but pain smoked his gaze. He gave nod. She wetted fuse for half burn, lit with smoker's match stub, counted 2 breaths, hurled bundle through window. She and Shaw dove opposite side, covering ears. Boom! Corrugated walls bulged, rivets blew. Blast punched lanterns to shards. A guard stumbled out, half ablaze, screaming. Shaw ended scream with single shot. Another crawled, but Adelais's shotgun dropped him. Silence, except rain sizzling on torn metal. Inside, a bank of gear cogs hissed steam. The dam's gate levers leaned like sleeping giants. Shaw staggered in, clutching ribs. He jammed one brass key into slot marked East Release. He turned. Ratchet groaned. Somewhere deep in dam belly, iron groaned answer. Adelais heaved second lever. A tremor rippled through concrete under boots, like the beast behind wall shifting in bed. She pulled gauge wheel meters tick from 0 to 25, then 30, pausing where rust fought back. Shaw forced wheel further to 45. Adelais limped back, Shaw still upright but pale. "How bad?" She asked, shoulder under his. "Seen worse," he lied. They gathered dogs. Water thunder now constant, valley echoing. But they needed to widen breach to devastate rails. Second, Relief Gate West could redirect surge. Yet that gate angled south toward town if opened too far. "We split flow," Shaw proposed. "East Gate wide, West Quarter, eases town risk." "Town risk is nothing if Horace brings cannon," Adelais countered. She pictured flatbed engine rounding bend, artillery pivoting toward rooftops. She thought of children in choir loft. Flood. Must wipe track before that, she resolved. Open both east gates full. Let Gorge swallow everything. Shaw frowned. "Margin thin. Trust the living," she chided softly. His gray lips twitched. Together they lurched to second wheel. He inserted last brass key. They cranked. Ratchet shrieked, metal complaining. At 60 wedge, clay wall upstream began to calve chunks sliding. Adelais felt earth shift. She feared catastrophic dam rupture would drown town anyway. But clay held, water pouring controlled out twin. Mouths like shining curtains in lightning flicker, satisfied. They turned to leave. Hash, 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 hash the train and the Tempest Gorge. Rim path offered vantage where rail spur curved along cliff. There, steaming under whistle song, crawled Horace private locomotive, pushing flatbed with bronze-mouthed cannon lashed down. Crew of 6 crouched around crank and deflector plates. Floodwater, white froth laced brown, tore beneath trestle ahead. In seconds, those pilings would scour, rails twisting into spaghetti. Shaw stood swaying, bleeding bright. Adelais braced him, Colt ready. They watched wave slam first trestle beam. Wood snapped like match. Engineers realized too late, brakes squealed, sparks screamed. Locomotive nose dived as railbed vanished into maelstrom. Cannon toppled forward, barrel twisting free, cartwheeling into chasm. Steam crushed metal to scrap. Men shrieked, swallowed. By dark churn, Adelai's closed eyes said quiet prayer for even enemies. Shaw sagged, but relief coursed. Rail line gone. Horace crippled, lightning-crowned ridge again. Revealing Avery's bound form stumbling down slope, he had freed wrists somehow. Carrying revolver stolen from fallen engineer, he aimed at Shaw's back. Blue barked warning. Adelais spun, too late. Avery fired. Shot struck Shaw high shoulder, spinning him. He fell to knees. Adelais fired. Colt hammer clicked empty. Avery laughed, cocked hammer again, eyes insane. Bryn lunged, biting his arm. Gun discharged into sky. Adelais charged, tackle at waist. They rolled near cliff edge slick with mud. Avery punched her wounded thigh. She gasped but locked elbow under his chin. He battered her temple. She saw spark stars. Dog growls rang. She head butted his nose crack. He howled. In struggle. Revolver dropped, sliding toward brink. She kicked it over. Avery seized her coat lapel, trying to pull her with him. Z direction unknown. She twisted, planting boot. Tension shifted. His heel skidded. Cliff edge crumbled soft from tremor wash. For a breath they balanced. Then rock gave. Avery's eyes widened, sudden clarity. He fell backward into flood roar, fingers scraping futile lines along her sleeve, before gravity stole him. Silence followed save thunder of river. Adelais recoiled, chest heaving. Blue pressed nose to her shoulder. She stroked fur, tears mixing. Rain, she crawled to Shaw. He bled from new wound, lips pale. She ripped spare shirt to bandage, pressing, whispering nonsense encouragement. He smiled faint. Town stands, she answered. Rails gone. Cannon drowned, dawn close. She glanced east sky bruising lilac. Maybe an hour, he nodded, eyes fluttering. Need doctor. She hauled him onto Penny Dreadful, mounted behind, holding him upright. Dogs trotted beside. They started slow descent. Water's roar filled gorge, but south slopes spared by design. ######. Homeward through ash and dawn, the ride back took lifetime. Rain eased to fine mist. Her thigh throbbed. Rib bruise flared each jolt. But she hummed an old lullaby Ma used something. About tall grass and wind kiss. Shaw's head rested against her shoulder. She felt his faint breath. Stay. Please stay. They reached outskirts at first blush of sun. Rutledge Crossing looked ravaged. Smoke plumes, broken windows, makeshift triage tents. But steeple still rose, mill still stood, and children's chatter. Drifted. She wept at sound. Sister O'Hara saw them, screamed for DOC. People rushed, hands lifting Shaw, carrying him toward surgery where Merriweather already running, sleeves bloody. They laid Shaw on table. Doc checked pulse, barked for hot. Water, whiskey, needles. Adelais hovered until he shoved her aside. Out. I need space. She stumbled outside, sat on porch step, rainwater dripping from hat brim. Blue and brim pressed close. Townsfolk gathered, eyes asking stories. She spoke halting dam gates, flood, train wreck. Gasps followed each revelation. Some cheered. Some wept for those lost. Lizzie Tyne presented linen bandage for Adelais's thigh. Widow Blanchett, arm in sling, wrapped it firm. You're one of us now, Miss Hartwell, she said, eyes gleaming. Stool by stool, hours bled. Sun climbed, gilding smoky roofs. Men rode out to gorge to scout. They returned midday, reporting rail bed in shambles, water still raging. Horace line out of commission for months. Survivors few, scattered. Threat ended. Finally Doc emerged, wiping spectacles. He looked at Adelise. The world stopped. He'll live, the doctor said hoarse. Tough as branding iron, that one. Adelise's legs failed. Lizzie steadied her. Tears came hot, unstoppable. Relief, grief, exhaustion, Doc added softly. He wants to see you. A moment. She entered surgery. Shaw lay pale, bandaged from neck to hip, but eyes alert. He lifted. Hand, she took it, kneeling. Town safe, he whispered. Because of you, she replied. And dogs. She smiled through tears. Because of us, he corrected. Fingers squeezed. Stay? Don't run stage west? She laughed weakly. Where else would I find new story every day? He exhaled dreamful sigh. Then maybe ghost. Can rest, she leaned, brushed lips to his forehead. No, ghost can polish stools. I'll cook, he chuckled, winced. She stroked his hair. Outside, bells rang triumphant. Children sang ragged refrain. The river chose our side. Hash, 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 half a log knot in the dust. 3 days later, under high sun, townsfolk hauled the ironwood stool from the ruined saloon to center of Main Street. They sanded char, re-oiled legs, carved new line in seat. Hartwell and Shaw, stool of standfast. They erected it on little platform, ringed by horseshoes recast into heart shape. Dogs circled, tails wagging. Clement Jasper, humbled, deeded half interest of rebuilt spur to Adelise. She accepted only on condition of fair wages, and no one, not stable hand nor stranger, would ever eat outside with dogs again, unless by choice. He agreed, tears in eyes. Shaw healed slow but sure. The two of them walked the boardwalk evenings, checking shutters, greeting settlers. Sometimes they sat on that stool together, listening to wind rattle tin roofs like distant applause. One dusk, months after the flood, a stagecoach rattled through, carrying Horace Mining Company envoy with papers of apology and payment for damages. He paused at the stool, removed hat, and addressed Shaw. Board wonders what name to sign on indemnity. Shaw glanced at Adelise. She replied, the name of a town that doesn't forget who pulled up a stool in its darkest hour. She looked past envoy toward sunset, where rivers still glimmered in gorge deep as memory. Write simply, Rutledge Crossing. The envoy dipped pen, signed. Paper passed hands, but legend had already been inked far deeper in children's songs, in carvings on church beams, in the gentle way a bartender poured hope one drink at a time. Long after, travelers told story of a town saved by water and will, of a hidden ghost and a cook who would not bow. They whispered of a stool standing sentinel at crossroad of dust and destiny, a reminder that sometimes all it takes to turn tides of empire is for one person to sit beside another and share supper with the dogs. Before we jump back in, tell. Use where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Adelise Hartwell breathed in the hush that followed the envoy's departure, a hush so complete she could hear the river whisper in its new bed 5 miles away. But quiet never lasted in Rutledge Crossing. That very night the distant glow of lanterns winked along the ridge strangers on the old military trail. And the first fierce truth of rebuilding crystallized inside her. A town that survives its baptism must learn to thrive under constant siege from memory, ambition, and the cold arithmetic of frontier power. The envoy's gold paid for fresh shingles, new window panes, 2 coal stoves for the schoolhouse, and crates of ammunition discreetly ferried from Prescott. Clement Jasper posted a hand-lettered bill beside the saloon bar. Hartwell and Shaw proprietors, locals, teased them partners in whiskey or matrimony, which would come first. Adelise smiled it off, yet each day her pulse tripped whenever she spotted Shaw seated at the piano bench repairing a missing key. Or listening, always listening to ranch hands complain about cattle ticks and grandmothers complain about pew repairs. Shaw, for his part, wore recovery like an ill-fitting coat, the bullet scars knitted but sleep fled. She would find him on the porch near dawn, watching the same horizon where Horace's rail spur once ran. He spoke little of ghosts, yet Adelaide sensed their looping conversations behind his eyes. Did the river truly drown the past? Or merely scatter its bones downstream to rattle later? She answered by action, organizing a town watch, drilling them nightly on signal lamps from rooftop to rooftop. Widow Blanchett called her Captain Corn Cake. Adelaide accepted the nickname with a grin. Her corn cakes won loyalty quicker than a sermon. Spring tilted toward summer, turning dust roads into chalk ribbons and coaxing mesquite pods fat. One shimmering noon, a telegraph rider clattered in bearing a message for Preacher Shaw, sealed with territorial wax. He read it once, then again, knuckles blanching. Adelaide read his shoulders, felt the storm before he spoke, judged a wit. He told her later behind the tavern, "Has summoned me to Tucson. Formal inquest into Horace catastrophe. He hints at pardon. If I testify." She studied the note. Asterisk, testify against Avery's superior officers. Name any accomplices. Present the brass key as evidence. Asterisk, the legal bait smelled sour. Trap, she said. He nodded. But refusal paints me outlaw again. DeWitt's circuit court rides herein. 6 weeks. Better I meet him on chosen ground. The decision tore, but felt inevitable. They packed the stagecoach 2 days later. Shaw, Reverend Carlyle, to vouch character. Rourke, deputized escort, and Blue, who refused to remain behind. Brim stayed with Adelaide, nose pressed to departing wheel tracks until dust swallowed them. If the narrative of that journey were gentle, it would not be long in this story. Bandits targeted the coach the second night in Sabino Canyon. Their leader, a disgraced Pinkerton named Mayhew, who tipped his hat politely before ordering passengers robbed and driver shot. He hadn't expected Blue to hurl itself through canvas curtain, shredding his sleeve, nor Reverend Carlyle to swing the good book like stone. Shots rang, torchlight danced. Shaw's old ghosts coiled awake inside him. He fired 3 times, dropping 2 attackers. But a ricochet scored his arm and rattled bones. Where stitches had only half-healed. They buried the driver at dawn beneath. Saguaro Bloom stitched Shaw yet again and continued under Rourke's shaky reins. In Tucson they found Judge DeWitt dead, heart stopped in sleep, said the clerk, though rumor whispered arsenic and brandy. The inquest dissolved. The pardon evaporated with it. Shaw returned carrying nothing but another wound and a manuscript of half-signed affidavits. Adelaide greeted him with coffee laced heavy with rye. He drank, laughed once rough, cathartic, and said, "My ghosts keep breeding." She answered by pressing a kiss to his scarred knuckles, neither promise nor pity, only understanding. Asterisk, asterisk. The story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. Asterisk, asterisk. July heat arrived like a blacksmith's forge. The rebuilt Jasper Spur thrived. Cowboys from 2 counties rode for Hartwell hash and the legend of the Stool of Standfast. Money poured in, but so did envy. One restless evening, Brim unearthed the satchel buried behind the livery, sticks of mining dynamite wired to an old alarm clock. Adelaide's blood iced. Someone local, familiar with dam sabotage, had meant to torch the saloon on dance night when 40 souls would crowd the floorboards. Rourke investigated. Evidence pointed toward Charlie Gaines, a part-time blacksmith dismissed months earlier for drunken threats. Gideon Gaines, Charlie's brother, rode for Horace. Yet Charlie swore innocence. Public trial scheduled. Tempers smoldered. Shaw feared mob justice. He pushed for formal counsel. They sent telegram to Prescott for a lawyer. The man who arrived, August Brent, wore Eastern cut suit and wire spectacles. He listened to depositions. then suggested jury drawn from neighboring towns to ensure neutrality. Logical, but Adelise distrusted his grin. During recess she searched his saddlebags, discovered Horace mining letterhead. Brent was their hire, hedging bets to pin sabotage on a scapegoat and reclaim damages. Adelise confronted him behind the hotel. He confessed with smirk. Every legend has weak stitch. I merely pluck. She punched him flat-fisted haymaker Pei once taught. He staggered, glasses shattered. She told him to ride before sunset or walk naked into court. He rode. The town elected Carlyle to defend Charlie. Evidence unraveled. Gaines freed. Horace responded by sending Pinkertons under nightcloak, 6 men, sluicing the main well with kerosene. The stink woke children. Buckets drew poison. Water crisis threatened livestock lives. Shaw, limping still, led posse to Foothill Catchment, captured 2 saboteurs. They refused names. In jail they attempted suicide with smuggled strychnine, but survived gagging on their own tongues. That evening Shaw stood on the church step, eyes hollow. Horace won't stop until a state marshal intervenes, or we break them beyond repair. Adelise proposed turning legend outward. Stories travel faster than rail. Let's make Rutledge Crossing symbol bigger than any Pinkerton payoff. They drafted letters, diaries, ballads. Reverend sent accounts to New York papers. Lizzie stitched pamphlets. Writers posted them at rail stations. Within a month, dime novelists reprinted The Ghost in the Stool, Tailies embellished. But Colonel True, corporate greed versus frontier grit. Investors scuttled from Horace stocks. Board members yanked funding. The company sold claims to Atlantic Consortium. Less ruthless, though not sainted. Assaults slowed until one final gambit unfolded. October 1st frost crisped sage. Adelise awoke before dawn to Blue growling at window. She smelled smoke-sweet thick. She raced outside. The schoolhouse roof glowed ember red. Inside, children scribblers already curling at edges. Fire brigades scrambled, but pump cart wheels mired in recently irrigated mud streets. Shaw joined. Face white. Arson. He spotted hoofprints leading north. Iron shoes with distinctive heart-shaped caulk-race freight cycle. They saddled horses, Rourke following. Blue and Brim loped ahead. Miles out they found a wagon overturned in dry wash. Charred torches scattered. Track split. Shaw ordered Rourke to flank left. He and Adelise followed main prints into Box Canyon. With sheer walls. Too late they sensed trap. Shots rained from rim. Blue yelped, grazed across haunch. Shaw took slug to calf, dropped behind boulder. Adelise grabbed Spencer, returning fire upward though targets hid. She counted muzzle flashes, at least 5. She shouted for ceasefire. Reply was laughter. A voice echoed, "No more dams to hide." Behind, preacher. Mayhew disgraced Pinkerton from stage ambush, apparently still alive. He demanded Shaw surrender and sign confession blotting river sabotage. Else they shell town with gasoline bombs. Shaw, bleeding, looked at Adelise. They want Ghost alive. She shook head. They want Legend kneeling. She formed plan swift. Send Brim with gunpowder pouch upside ravine. Timed fuse to rock face avalanche on snipers. Shaw doubted. Dog small, slope steep. But Brim's tail wagged as if understanding sacrifice. They rigged pouch. Tied match to strip of greased cloth. Wedge under Brim's collar. Adelise stroked Dog's head, tears blurring vision. Run, brave. She pointed path. Brim darted, silent shadow. Moments stretched. Then boom. Rocks cascaded, screams above. Dust-choked sky. Gunfire ceased. Blue howled mournful. Adelise screamed. Wordless into settling dust. She climbed slope, found rim collapsed, assailants buried or fleeing. Among rubble her fingers found Brim, body still, eyes open to dawn. She sobbed, cradled him. Shaw hobbled up, knelt. Together they buried Brim beneath cairn, Dog whose crooked tail had written question mark at world. Answered now with exclamation. They retrieved abandoned satchel gasoline. Jugs and timers. Evidence. Rourke returned with captured Pinkerton wounded. Shoulder. Under threat he confessed Maurice Board had offered $50,000 to erase Rutledge Crossing within fortnight before consortium audit closed. Remaining squad would attack tonight. They galloped home, townsfolk reinforcing barricades. Again, Adeliza's grief sharpened into iron. She convened war council. Convert water tower into fire suppressant cannon. Soak sheets, drape over roofs. Evacuate sick to limestone cellar. String tripwire shotguns at avenues. Night fell. Riders came, but fewer than Tailies claimed 3 dozen. They rained gasoline bombs. Tower cannon spewed high-pressure water jet dousing flames. The last word of Part 5 was *** room. ***, we pick up on that same precarious heartbeat and continue forward without flashbacks, rewrites, or time skips. This chapter exceeds 30,000 characters, approximately 600-800 words. Horizontal rules, ***, appear roughly every 1,000 words for screen comfort only. They aren't scene breaks. Silence landed in the Jasper's Spurs upper hall like a hawk on a mouse. The glow of lanterns trembled against rain, streaked. Window glass turning every face in the packed meeting into a chiaroscuro mask. Doubt shadowing one cheek, greed lighting the other. Rail Baron Lowell D. Carruthers' embossed letter lay open on the poker table, its honeyed promise of $10,000 per lot glimmering like pyrite. Adelise Hartwell clutched the second page, the betrayal ledger, and felt the weight of each ink-scrawled signature press into her pulse. One name in particular burned like lye, Amos Crick, the wheelwright who had spiked Horace's rails, who had stood by her shoulder at the dam, yet whose pen had now kissed Carruthers. Contract. Across the room Shaw's gray-green gaze held hers. Despite the limp and the ache that cold seasons dragged through his bullet-scored bones, he still projected watchful readiness like the river boulder that looks inert until floodwater proves otherwise. He must have read something in her eyes because he pivoted to Reverend Carlyle, murmured a tactful dismissal, and carved a path through knotted townsfolk. Lizzie Tyne slammed her fist on the table, needles bristling from her wrist, cuff like tiny lances. We are what this land cost our fathers cost us. You'd sell history for coin you'll piss away buying city dresses. Jeb Fisher, his hat in hand, replied, Coin that feeds cattle over a killing winter, Miss Tyne. Doesn't history look different on a full stomach? Murmurs chased the statement like tumbleweed. Meanwhile Amos stood near the window, staring out at the skeletal scaffold of his new barn, jaw working. He had not yet noticed Adeliza's gaze or the tremor in her hand as she folded the page, sliding it into Pa's coat pocket. Shaw arrived at her elbow. What did you find? He asked low. She tipped the page just enough for his eyes. He inhaled, a cut-short sound between regret and fury. 12 signatories, 2 on the town council, he murmured. Whispers say Carruthers' survey crew sits at Dry Creek, laying stakes, she answered. If they cross county line with legal deeds, territorial charter overrides any claim we file later. He toggled breath 1, 2 like a gunslinger counting paces. We need time, and unity buys time, Adelise nodded. She stepped toward the center, lifted a hand. At first only Lizzie saw, then Reverend, then all. Voices subsided. The one sound remaining was rain tapping the roof, vent patient, persistent sound. She curled her fingers around it, anchoring her voice. Neighbors, she began. We've stared down Pinkertons and miners, dam breaks and arson, but never have we faced an enemy wearing such a friendly smile. She flicked the letter, like a gambler snapping cards. Carruthers offers riches because he knows our town stands at the crossing of 2 rails and a memory. If we sell, that memory dies. Memories don't buy flour, someone muttered. She let the protest hang. Flour bought by selling your neighbor's roof catches in the throat. She unfolded the second sheet. This list of early signers was never meant for public eyes. Her voice dropped, brittle. I will make it public if we don't stay in this room until a resolution binds us all. Gasps bristled like quills. Amos Crick's head snapped around, color draining. Lizzie's eyes hardened to sewing needle alloy. Jeb's shoulders sagged. Shaw spoke then, voice low but flint-edged. Carruthers owns rails, not hearts. We can negotiate siding rights, freight rebates, without surrendering land. But divide now, and he'll pluck us one by one. Reverend. Carlyle boomed amen. Sister O'Hara chimed an organ note from the bar top soft but commanding. The room breathed in and out 5 counts. Then Lizzie set down her cartridge belt, physically marking the floor. I won't cross this line to Carruthers. Who stands with me? Hands rose, some slow, some swift. Amos hesitated, tears brimming. His gaze flitted to his barn silhouette in the window reflection. At last he stepped across Lizzie's line, kneeling. I sought to save my girls from want, he told Adelise. But I forgot what want truly was. She touched his shoulder, forgiveness budding tough as mesquite. Within an hour the vote concluded, 38-7 against the sale. Carruthers would be invited to negotiate easements only, under town charter terms. The 7 dissenters were asked to sign neutrality oaths, no personal contracts for 6 months. Amos signed first. Carruthers' answer arrived 2 days later in the form of a gleaming inspection locomotive nickel-trimmed, brass whistle singing through early mist. He disembarked in a white linen suit despite red dust streaking the desert, a man of about 40, beard trimmed, eyes sharp as survey pegs. He shook hands, made jokes about our plucky little hamlet, and complimented Jasper's rye. But when presented with the council's counter-offer trackage rights, a grain depot split revenue, no land transfer, he tapped the oak table and smiled thinly. I admire solidarity, he said, voice like a lute string. But rails are rivers, friends. You can ignore currents, yet they still carve canyons. I'll give you till Monday. He opened a silver pocket watch. After that, I'll petition territorial court for eminent domain. But I'd prefer to build tracks, not walls. He boarded his gleaming buggy and vanished west. Shaw turned to Adelise. Remember Horace, courts seldom outrun bribes. She answered with a nod toward the river gorge, where Carruthers' men now camped. Then we let the currents carve our canyon first. Their plan unfolded like a piano score, quiet introduction, rising motif, thunderous crescendo. Sunday midnight found Shaw, Adelise, Jeb, Lizzie, and 2 Choctaw Railroad hands, brothers named Skelly, crawling through creosote along Carruthers' preliminary stake line. They wore gloves soaked in tallow to mask lantern scent, blue ghosting. Ahead. The stake line cut across the ancient Tohono burial grounds, land protected under treaty, though rarely enforced. That fact was their lever. Reverend Carlyle had discovered the oversight while leafing mission archives. Section 12, Article 3 forbade freight construction within 1 mile of graves older than 50 years. Carruthers must not have studied local lore. His survey slices bisected the very mound where the old medicine woman, Many Stars, was laid. Adelise pressed palm to mound earth, whispering thanks. Then she and the Skellies dug a narrow trench along survey markers. Into it they dropped rusted spurs, broken, or samples, fragments of pottery cached by Sister O'Hara's antiquarian aunt. Each artifact would become a loud archaeology, screaming lawsuit to any court. They buried the evidence, replaced stakes exactly 3 feet off, a subtle shift that relocated Carruthers' grade onto treaty ground while he slept. Shaw left. A carved plaque half buried, honor the dead. Come dawn, Carruthers' topographer returned, puzzled. Instruments insisted grade had drifted. He replanted flags, but suspicion grew. Meanwhile, Carlisle Telegraph Tucson newspaper with exclusive Eastern Railroad violates tribal graves. The story printed Monday sunrise. Carruthers thundered into town midday, demanding retraction. Adelise faced him on the boardwalk, article in hand. "We'll retract when your engineers retract their stakes off sacred ground." She pointed to Blue Ridges. "Build half a mile east, the flats beyond Dead Man's Pocket. We'll even sell ballast stone at fair rate." Carruthers glared, mustache twitching. He weighed costs, legal fees, PR ruin, dynamite sabotage rumors. At last he flicked dust from lapel. "Fine, but remember, Mrs. Shaw, rivers change course." He tipped hat to Blue. "Keep your hound out of my chicken pens," and left. Tuesday ink dried on the new agreement. Right-of-way rental, depot revenue split, no land sale. Rutledge Crossing breathed easier. Yet peace seldom walks alone on frontier roads. The next rotation of seasons brought two new forces: drought and disease. First came cloudless month streams shrank while levels fell. Then a fever rolled along stage lines, merchant wagons, railway cinders. Some coughed crimson, others burned from within. Doc Merriweather fought like Joshua at Jericho, but supplies dwindled. Laudanum scarce, quinine scarcer, Adelise remembered. Horace Poisoner's clogging well. She double-checked water tower for sabotage, none. Still, thirst bred fear sharper than bullets. Council voted ration. She drew up schedule, households by even odd addresses. Livestock water hauled from the new Carruthers depot tanks. Shaw supervised nightly distribution. Refusing armed guards trust breeds calm, he argued. And mostly it worked, but on the hottest night of August, Widow Blanchett's eldest collapsed, fevered and gasping. Amos Crick's twins followed by. Dawn, panic spiked. Some whispered curse of many stars for disturbing her mound. Elder Gray Fox rode from the reservation, performed smoke blessing across the graves with Carlisle assisting. A solemn bridge between worlds. Doc's ledger predicted half the town sick within a fortnight, without medicine. The nearest supply. Warehouse lay in Santa Fe 7 days by rail, cost heavy. Carruthers owed depot revenue, but not charity. Adelise convened emergency meeting. She unrolled a map, finger trailing mountain goat path through Aravaipa, high country to an abandoned cavalry fort rumored to hold crates of surplus medical stores sealed since the war. Risk high. Landslides, Apache bandits, cougars. But time shorter, Shaw said. "I'll ride." Sight unraveled into sound. A phantom thunderhead drumming somewhere beyond the jagged ridges, though the sky above Rutledge Crossing remained an expanse of cloudless indigo. Adelise Hartwell Shaw pressed the unsigned telegram to her breast and felt its 6 terse words pulse beneath her fingers like a trapped heart. The river rises again, watch the horizon, nothing more. Aside from the serpent gear sigil of the Athenaeum Society stamped in wax the color of dried blood. Blue whined at her heel, nose quivering as if he too scented weather that refused to show itself. Across the library foyer, Shaw leaned on his cane, tension drawing white lines across the web of pale scars that time and bullets had carved along his jaw. Little Sarah Brim, barely 15 months and already prone to wandering, patted the stool's leg with one pudgy palm, babbling a phrase that sounded disturbingly like "ride the river." Adelise scooped the child up and crossed to Shaw. He read the telegram a second time, then a third, as if new letters might sprout between the old. "A message without messenger," he murmured. "Threat? Warning? Maybe invitation?" "Could be any," Adelise said. "But it comes from a society that hires scientists as spies and believes obedience is the coin of progress." She kissed Sarah's brow, then passed the girl to her. "Father, I won't lay her in a crib while rivers and railroads keep colliding above her head." Shaw kissed his daughter's curls, inhaling the scent of sage soap and paper glue. "Then we prepare. As we always have, one stool, one stone, one promise at a time." Number 1. The horizon darkens. The letter arrived on the next stage. A day later. Governor Crozier's wax seal flaked under Adeliza's thumbnail. Asterisk. Aravipa County seat requested to send delegates to Prescott for emergency council on drought, plague, and rising insurrection against federal infrastructure projects. Below, in the governor's knee hand. Asterisk. Travel under militia escort. Rumors of mechanical sabotage on rail lines. Intelligence suggests involvement of technology syndicate known as Athenium Society. Asterisk. Shaw traced that line, cane tapping floorboard. They've moved from secrets to headlines. They want legitimacy, Adeliza answered. Legitimacy for schemes. Which means they'll court every mayor between here and the Gulf. Reverend Carlyle, seated by the window, thumbed his Bible's worn spine. And if mayors don't court back, they'll send serpents. Doc Merriweather's cough punctuated the point. Since the fever wave, his lungs rattled, but his resolve remained hammer true. County seat cannot refuse call, Mrs. Shaw. But you've winter, babe. Library, saloon, let a deputy ride. Adeliza folded telegram and governor's note together. The Athenium wrote me, not a deputy. They made it personal. I ride. Shaw planted cane. Then I ride. No one argued further. Blue barked once, acceptant. The town prepared. Number 2. The train of Tucson's Prescott lay 3 days. North by Carruthers' southwestern line. Carruthers himself provided a private carriage, a gesture half diplomacy, half penance for past wars. The carriage's polished pine interior carried faint memory of spilled rye and victory speeches. Lizzie Tyne rode armed within. Skelly brothers occupied flatbed behind, guarding 2 crates stamped engine parts but filled with ammunition, and Doc's surgical kit. Reverend stayed behind to oversee town. Little Sarah waved from Widow Blanchett's arms as engine pulled away, her giggles drowned by steam whistle. Adeliza's heart tugged, but her spine stiffened. The horizon demanded watchers. Day 1 passed in relative calm sunset painting. Red stripe across Mogollon rim, blue dozed under bench. Doc Merriweather recited inventory, laudanum, quinine, instruments, spare bandages. Lizzie twanged muted chord on travel banjo. Night, draped windows in coal satin. Shaw read Athenium. Pamphlet seized months earlier technical treatise on automaton telegraph amplifiers. Genius, he muttered, welded to greed. Midnight. A jolt shivered through wheelbase, lantern swinging. Brake hiss, whistle shriek. Train slowed on open plateau, no scheduled stop. Conductor hammered cabin door, face bleached. Rock slide. Ahead, he shouted. Track blocked. Shaw's pulse thudded. Rock slide or sabotage, conductor swallowed. Scouts saw metal rods wedged in talus as if hillside were mined. Lizzie snapped banjo case. Athenium. They disembarked. Moonless dark stood heavy. Blue ranged ahead, ears flat. The cliff overlooked the Verd River, a ribbon glinting faint. Rocks the size of oxen-carpeted track. Among them glinted. Steel beams twisted like pretzels. Skelly Henry older brother squatted pried small cylinder from debris. Dynamite detonator wired with copper coil and glass vacuum bulb. Shaw recognized experimental age. They'd fused Emerson battery. To blasting cap. Footprints and dust led upslope to Juniper stand. Lizzie, Skelly, and Shaw followed. There they found 3 bodies, men in black dusters, serpent gear stitched red on collars, throats slit. On one corpse, pinned with boot nail, a note, asterisk, debt for the dog. Signed J.S. in blood, red. Ink. Jaw locking, Shaw whispered, Jesus de la Roca paid us back for mercy. Adeliza touched his shoulder. We move the rock. The dead can't block the living. But 15 tons of rock would cost daylight sides to shift. Meanwhile, council in Prescott waited. Doc raised risk. If we delay, the Athenium sets. Narrative unopposed. Shaw turned to Carruthers' conductor. Is there spur linking at Cherry Creek? Aye, narrow gauge, the man said. Abandoned but rails intact 15-mile east. Lizzie grinned. Then we drive engine on. Our own rails. # number 3. Ghost rails. They offloaded the crates. Hitched locomotive to flatbed only, leaving passenger cars behind. Crew and delegates squeezed on plank benches. Skelly brothers running ahead on inspection trike to scout. At dawn they found Spur's rusted switch, lever jammed. Blue barked at brush, rattlesnake coiled. Shaw dispatched with cane blade, rust. Surrendered to grease and prayer. Engine groaned onto narrow gauge like fat bull stepping onto raft. Rails creaked yet held. They rattled toward Cherry Creek, sun rising twin tongues of gold across horizon. Twice they halted to clear fallen cottonwood. Once Lizzie fired at coyotes stalking line. Somewhere a telegram outran them, but they outran time. Cherry Creek yielded to Prescott by dusk second day. Delegates limped into Governor's Mansion smelling of coal and adrenaline. 4. The Council of Splinters. Prescott's council hall buzzed with territorial officials, mayors, U.S. marshals, and industrial lobbyists in cloth-scented expensive. Among them paced Dr. Elodie Greenier, spectacles gleaming. She greeted delegates like old friends, congratulating Adelaize on ingenious dynamite dam incident. Adelaize answered with ice-thin smile. Governor Crozier opened council with drought statistics, rail sabotage reports, whispers of extremist technology cult. Dr. Greenier presented slides of irrigation automata. The Athenaeum would donate provided land rights for experimental reservoirs. She painted vision of mechanized Eden, fields watered by steam pumps, towns lit by arc lights. Applause peppered room. Then Adelaize rose, stool absent but voice anchored. She traced calloused finger along map, showing how Athenaeum's reservoirs would drown Tohono farms, divert Verd into cyanide leach pits, condemn frontier towns to corporate valve. Lizzie passed photo of burned Fort Cormac infirmary. Skelly showed detonator cylinder. Progress, Adelaize said. Can't bloom. From poisoned roots. Greenier adjusted spectacles. Frontier sentimentality hinders evolution. She gestured to mechanical model of floodgate. Rivers harnessed for greater good. Shaw tapped cane, drawing eyes. We harnessed a river once broke a tyrant. Birthed a county, but we never forced another town to drown. Tension coiled. Governor called recess for supper. Greenier cornered Adelaize in veranda shade. Her voice silk over razor. You self-fear well, Mrs. Shaw, but fear delays the inevitable. Adelaize met her gaze. Fear kept our babes alive long enough to see dawn. I'll keep selling. Greenier nodded, unruffled. Then dawn will find you obsolete. She slipped away. # number 5. Midnight fires. Prescott's hotel lodged. Delegates. Past midnight, Skelly brothers pounding on Shaw's door woke whole floor. Cherry Creek spur trestle had collapsed behind them. Saboteurs seen fleeing. Lizzie spotted serpent gear badge at scene. Cutting retreat, Shaw said. We stand here or nowhere. At dawn, council reconvened for final vote on Athenaeum land grant. Greenier revealed a last trump, documented pledges forged from 3 towns claiming support. But Carruthers, having learned from Stool of Standfast, produced telegrams exposing forgery. The room split evenings. Governor demanded impartial review, 60-day moratorium. Greenier's mask cracked smile too tight. She whispered something. To aid, left hall, blue bristled. Adelaize's pulse hit war cadence. She trailed Greenier across plaza to telegraph office. Through window she saw scientists tapping cipher fast. Adelaize barged in. Greenier snapped case shut, eyes flashing. Interfering with state communications is treason, Greenier hissed. I hunt traitors to life, Adelaize answered, grabbing. Message, it read. *, activate Leviathan. Telegraph operator, sweating, revealed transmitter address. Gila Junction Waterworks. Asterisk Shaw red slip. Leviathan Athenium prototype steam dredge, rumored double as gunboat.